Selamat datang di era transformasi digital koperasi dan UMKM. Ini adalah era ketika cerita tentang koperasi dan UMKM bukan lagi soal mengharap uluran tangan, namun lebih tentang ia menjadi harapan di masa yang penuh tantangan. Sedari dulu, sedikit yang menyadari bahwa mereka yang dianggap pelaku ekonomi pinggiran, mereka yang menggerakkan koperasi dan UMKM, sejatinya merupakan pilar utama ekonomi bangsa ini. Lihat saja, mereka adalah mayoritas pelaku ekonomi tanah air dengan lebih dari 61% kontribusinya terhadap PDB negeri ini. Tangan-tangan dan langkah mereka kini menjadi harapan kebangkitan, meskipun 3 tantangan disrupsi menghadang seketika. Pandemi yang telah mengubah cara hidup, struktur demografi yang beralih, hingga gelombang perubahan teknologi digital era kedua yang kecepatannya tak terbayangkan sebelumnya. Maka, inilah era ketika transformasi digital bagi koperasi dan UMKM menjadi keniscayaan. Yakinkan bahwa mereka para pejuang ekonomi rakyat tidak sendiri, sebab pemerintah mendorong jutaan UMKM onboarding ke platform digital. Sementara, koperasi modern berbasis digital terus ditumbuhkan, kembangkan. Orkestra telah dimainkan dengan harmonis sebagaimana Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM mengupayakan penerapan proses bisnis dari hulu ke hilir atau end-to-end digital transformation. Dengan semangat sinergi dan kolaborasi seluruh stakeholder, marilah kita sambut kebangkitan koperasi dan UMKM dalam menciptakan new economic value menuju Indonesia maju, mandiri, dan berdaulat. Ini era kita, ini era koperasi dan UMKM. Berubah digital.
Kesetaraan gender masih menjadi isu global yang bergulir di tengah masyarakat. Berbagai gerakan dalam memperjuangkan kesetaraan gender juga terus berkembang seiring dengan kemajuan zaman. Namun sayangnya, perempuan masih belum cukup terwakilkan dalam skala ekonomi global dengan berbagai bentuk diskriminasi yang dihadapi. Mulai dari peluang yang tidak memenuhi syarat, kurangnya akses keuangan, hingga bias gender menjadi sekian dari bentuk diskriminasi yang sering dihadapi oleh perempuan, baik di Indonesia maupun dunia. Indonesia memiliki lebih dari 64 juta UMKM yang berkontribusi terhadap 60% PDB nasional, dengan 64% diantaranya adalah perempuan. Oleh karena itu, peningkatan peran perempuan pada UMKM juga perlu didorong dalam arus utama kebijakan, di mana perempuan tidak hanya ditempatkan sebagai pemain sekunder, tetapi menjadi pemain inti dalam keberlangsungan UMKM. Dalam kurun waktu 20 tahun terakhir, terdapat peningkatan terhadap jumlah usaha yang dipimpin oleh perempuan sebesar 114%, dengan fakta 62% pengusaha perempuan berusia antara 40 hingga 59 tahun. Data dari Kementerian Keuangan juga menyebutkan bahwa indeks inklusi keuangan perempuan di Indonesia mencapai 75,15%. Hal tersebut menjadi acuan bagi pemerintah dalam mendorong peningkatan inklusi keuangan perempuan demi terciptanya kesempatan yang sama bagi perempuan di bidang keuangan. Memperhatikan cross-cutting isu perempuan, Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM berkolaborasi dengan engagement group W20 dan B20 yang menjadi upaya agar lebih banyak perempuan memimpin, berpartisipasi, serta memiliki akses pada peluang bisnis dan ekonomi dengan mendukung UMKM yang dimiliki dan dikelola oleh perempuan. Melalui berbagai inisiatif, dukungan, dan gerakan yang terus berjalan, Empowering Women Entrepreneur Through Inclusive Business menjadi sebuah monumen kolaborasi antara Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM dengan Kementerian Pemberdayaan Perempuan dan Perlindungan Anak, W20, B20, Apindo, serta beberapa stakeholder lainnya untuk mewujudkan pemberdayaan wirausaha perempuan dalam mencapai tujuan Recover with Small and Medium Enterprises.
Sama ini
Pusat Layanan Usaha Terpadu atau PLUT UMKM merupakan unit teknis yang memberikan layanan pendampingan usaha yang inklusif kepada koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha secara komprehensif dan terpadu. Dengan terbitnya Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 7 Tahun 2021 menunjukkan keberpihakan pemerintah terhadap koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha serta memperkuat peran PLUT UMKM melalui pendataan UMKM, perizinan produk dan usaha, kemitraan, dan inkubasi melalui lembaga inkubator. PLUT UMKM telah tersebar di 74 provinsi, kabupaten, dan kota. Melalui redesign program PLUT, diyakini akan menjadi akselerator pengembangan layanan PLUT menjadi rumah UMKM. New PLUT akan menjadi fondasi dalam membentuk ekosistem wirausaha muda, produktif, inovatif, dan berkelanjutan. Melalui program pusat konsultasi dan pendampingan, pusat pengembangan produk unggulan daerah, factory sharing, marketplace, public space, kompetisi PLUT, pendaftaran usaha dan perizinan UMKM dengan layanan yang diberikan yaitu coworking space, konsultasi bisnis dan pendampingan, promosi dan pemasaran, pelatihan teknis dan manajerial, inkubasi bisnis, perizinan dan sertifikasi usaha, seleksi atau kurasi, dan perluasan kemitraan. New PLUT, Rumah UMKM, dan Center of Excellence.
UMKM adalah kita. Dahulu orang bijak senantiasa yakin bahwa masa depan adalah milik mereka yang menyiapkan hari ini. Sampai saatnya semua yakin ketika hanya merekalah yang bekerja keras, mampu membuktikan diri menjadi insan-insan yang tidak berada dalam kerugian. Saudaraku, begitulah hakikatnya perjuangan. Percayalah, proses sungguh tidak akan mengkhianati hasil. Jika engkau tidak yakin, sejenak tengoklah para pengusaha mikro dan kecil UMKM yang meniagakan hidupnya dengan semangat tinggi. Mereka adalah jiwa-jiwa yang meyakini bahwa bangsa kita bukanlah bangsa yang pemalas. Berapa lamanya kita menggantungkan diri pada mereka yang terus bergerak, bekerja, memutar roda perekonomian dengan tangan-tangan kecilnya, menjadi tulang punggung yang menumpu faktor pembagi dalam demografi. Akuilah, UMKM adalah nafas bangsa ini. Ada satu masa, bukan sekali dua kali, ketika industri ambruk, pabrik-pabrik menutup operasi, kantor-kantor mengurangi jumlah pegawai, hingga koridor gedung-gedung besar menjadi demikian sepi. Kemana larinya mereka yang tereliminasi jika UMKM tidak menyambut dan memeluk mereka tetap dengan asa yang menghubung tinggi? Pun saat pandemi yang memporak-porandakan kehidupan, jangan mudah lupa bahwa UMKM lah yang menjadi penyelamat bangsa ini. Meski nafasnya juga tersendat, terhantam badai pandemi yang dahsyat, namun para pejuang ini tetap gagah berani, tegak berdiri. Indonesia sepertinya inilah saatnya untuk berpihak pada pilar-pilar kecil yang nyatanya adalah fondasi perekonomian bangsa ini. Saatnya memperpanjang nafas mereka dan memulihkan sakit akibat pandemi karena mereka jualah bagian dari pemulihan ekonomi. Memulihkan UMKM adalah memulihkan bangsa. Mereka berhak akan BPUM, subsidi kur, hingga transformasi digital agar semangat tetap laju. Banggakan mereka dengan menjadikannya sebagai bagian dari kebanggaan kita. Banggalah akan karya mereka, sebab UMKM adalah kita.
Selamat datang di era transformasi digital koperasi dan UMKM. Ini adalah era ketika cerita tentang koperasi dan UMKM bukan lagi soal mengharap uluran tangan, namun lebih tentang ia menjadi harapan di masa yang penuh tantangan. Sedari dulu, sedikit yang menyadari bahwa mereka yang dianggap pelaku ekonomi pinggiran, mereka yang menggerakkan koperasi dan UMKM, sejatinya merupakan pilar utama ekonomi bangsa ini. Lihat saja, mereka adalah mayoritas pelaku ekonomi tanah air dengan lebih dari 61% kontribusinya terhadap PDB negeri ini. Tangan-tangan dan langkah mereka kini menjadi harapan kebangkitan, meskipun 3 tantangan disrupsi menghadang seketika. Pandemi yang telah mengubah cara hidup, struktur demografi yang beralih, hingga gelombang perubahan teknologi digital era kedua yang kecepatannya tak terbayangkan sebelumnya. Maka, inilah era ketika transformasi digital bagi koperasi dan UMKM menjadi keniscayaan. Yakinkan bahwa mereka para pejuang ekonomi rakyat tidak sendiri, sebab pemerintah mendorong jutaan UMKM onboarding ke platform digital. Sementara, koperasi modern berbasis digital terus ditumbuhkan, kembangkan. Orkestra telah dimainkan dengan harmonis sebagaimana Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM mengupayakan penerapan proses bisnis dari hulu ke hilir atau end-to-end digital transformation. Dengan semangat sinergi dan kolaborasi seluruh stakeholder, marilah kita sambut kebangkitan koperasi dan UMKM dalam menciptakan new economy value menuju Indonesia maju, mandiri, dan berdaulat. Ini era kita, ini era koperasi dan UMKM. Berubah digital.
Kesetaraan gender masih menjadi isu global yang bergulir di tengah masyarakat. Berbagai gerakan dalam memperjuangkan kesetaraan gender juga terus berkembang seiring dengan kemajuan zaman. Namun sayangnya, perempuan masih belum cukup terwakilkan dalam skala ekonomi global dengan berbagai bentuk diskriminasi yang dihadapi. Mulai dari peluang yang tidak memenuhi syarat, kurangnya akses keuangan, hingga bias gender menjadi sekian dari bentuk diskriminasi yang sering dihadapi oleh perempuan, baik di Indonesia maupun dunia. Indonesia memiliki lebih dari 64 juta UMKM yang berkontribusi terhadap 60% PDB nasional, dengan 64% diantaranya adalah perempuan. Oleh karena itu, peningkatan peran perempuan pada UMKM juga perlu didorong dalam arus utama kebijakan, di mana perempuan tidak hanya ditempatkan sebagai pemain sekunder, tetapi menjadi pemain inti dalam keberlangsungan UMKM. Dalam kurun waktu 20 tahun terakhir, terdapat peningkatan terhadap jumlah usaha yang dipimpin oleh perempuan sebesar 114%, dengan fakta 62% pengusaha perempuan berusia antara 40 hingga 59 tahun. Data dari Kementerian Keuangan juga menyebutkan bahwa indeks inklusi keuangan perempuan di Indonesia mencapai 75,15%. Hal tersebut menjadi acuan bagi pemerintah dalam mendorong peningkatan inklusi keuangan perempuan demi terciptanya kesempatan yang sama bagi perempuan di bidang keuangan. Memperhatikan cross-cutting isu perempuan, Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM berkolaborasi dengan engagement group W20 dan B20 yang menjadi upaya agar lebih banyak perempuan memimpin, berpartisipasi, serta memiliki akses pada peluang bisnis dan ekonomi dengan mendukung UMKM yang dimiliki dan dikelola oleh perempuan. Melalui berbagai inisiatif, dukungan, dan gerakan yang terus berjalan, Empowering Women Entrepreneur Through Inclusive Business menjadi sebuah monumen kolaborasi antara Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM dengan Kementerian Pemberdayaan Perempuan dan Perlindungan Anak, W20, B20, Apindo, serta beberapa stakeholder lainnya untuk mewujudkan pemberdayaan wirausaha perempuan dalam mencapai tujuan Recover with Small and Medium Enterprises.
Pusat Layanan Usaha Terpadu atau PLUT UMKM merupakan unit teknis yang memberikan layanan pendampingan usaha yang inklusif kepada koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha secara komprehensif dan terpadu. Dengan terbitnya Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 7 Tahun 2021 menunjukkan keberpihakan pemerintah terhadap koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha serta memperkuat peran PLUT UMKM melalui pendataan UMKM, perizinan produk dan usaha, kemitraan, dan inkubasi melalui lembaga inkubator. PLUT UMKM telah tersebar di 74 provinsi, kabupaten, dan kota. Melalui redesign program PLUT, diyakini akan menjadi akselerator pengembangan layanan PLUT menjadi rumah UMKM. New PLUT akan menjadi fondasi dalam membentuk ekosistem wirausaha muda, produktif, inovatif, dan berkelanjutan. Melalui program pusat konsultasi dan pendampingan, pusat pengembangan produk unggulan daerah, factory sharing, marketplace, public space, kompetisi PLUT, pendaftaran usaha dan perizinan UMKM dengan layanan yang diberikan yaitu coworking space, konsultasi bisnis dan pendampingan, promosi dan pemasaran, pelatihan teknis dan manajerial, inkubasi bisnis, perizinan dan sertifikasi usaha, seleksi atau kurasi, dan perluasan kemitraan. New PLUT, rumah UMKM, dan Center of Excellence.
UMKM adalah kita. Dahulu orang bijak senantiasa yakin bahwa masa depan adalah milik mereka yang menyiapkan hari ini. Sampai saatnya semua yakin ketika hanya merekalah yang bekerja keras, mampu membuktikan diri menjadi insan-insan yang tidak berada dalam kerugian. Saudaraku, begitulah hakikatnya perjuangan. Percayalah, proses sungguh tidak akan mengkhianati hasil. Jika engkau tidak yakin, sejenak tengoklah para pengusaha mikro dan kecil UMKM yang meniagakan hidupnya dengan semangat tinggi. Mereka adalah jiwa-jiwa yang meyakini bahwa bangsa kita bukanlah bangsa yang pemalas. Berabad selamanya kita menggantungkan diri pada mereka yang terus bergerak, bekerja, memutar roda perekonomian dengan tangan-tangan kecilnya, menjadi tulang punggung yang menumpu faktor pembagi dalam demografi. Akuilah, UMKM adalah nafas bangsa ini. Ada satu masa, bukan sekali dua kali, ketika industri ambruk, pabrik-pabrik menutup operasi, kantor-kantor mengurangi jumlah pegawai, hingga koridor gedung-gedung besar menjadi demikian sepi. Kemana larinya mereka yang tereliminasi jika UMKM tidak menyambut dan memeluk mereka tetap dengan asa yang menghubung tinggi? Pun saat pandemi yang memporak-porandakan kehidupan, jangan mudah lupa bahwa UMKM lah yang menjadi penyelamat bangsa ini. Meski nafasnya juga tersendat, terhantam badai pandemi yang dahsyat, namun para pejuang ini tetap gagah berani, tegak berdiri. Indonesia sepertinya inilah saatnya untuk berpihak pada pilar-pilar kecil yang nyatanya adalah fondasi perekonomian bangsa ini. Saatnya memperpanjang nafas mereka dan memulihkan sakit akibat pandemi karena mereka jualah bagian dari pemulihan ekonomi. Memulihkan UMKM adalah memulihkan bangsa. Mereka berhak akan BPUM, subsidi kur, hingga transformasi digital agar semangat tetap laju. Banggakan mereka dengan menjadikannya sebagai bagian dari kebanggaan kita. Banggalah akan karya mereka, sebab UMKM adalah kita.
Selamat datang di era transformasi digital koperasi dan UMKM. Ini adalah era ketika cerita tentang koperasi dan UMKM bukan lagi soal mengharap uluran tangan, namun lebih tentang ia menjadi harapan di masa yang penuh tantangan. Sedari dulu, sedikit ia menyadari bahwa mereka yang dianggap pelaku ekonomi pinggiran, mereka yang menggerakkan koperasi dan UMKM, sejatinya merupakan pilar utama ekonomi bangsa ini. Lihat saja, mereka adalah mayoritas pelaku ekonomi tanah air dengan lebih dari 61% kontribusinya terhadap PDB negeri ini. Tangan-tangan dan langkah mereka kini menjadi harapan kebangkitan, meskipun 3 tantangan disrupsi menghadang seketika. Pandemi yang telah mengubah cara hidup, struktur demografi yang beralih, hingga gelombang perubahan teknologi digital era kedua yang kecepatannya tak terbayangkan sebelumnya. Maka, inilah era ketika transformasi digital bagi koperasi dan UMKM menjadi keniscayaan. Yakinkan bahwa mereka para pejuang ekonomi rakyat tidak sendiri, sebab pemerintah mendorong jutaan UMKM onboarding ke platform digital. Sementara, koperasi modern berbasis digital terus ditumbuhkan, kembangkan. Orkestra telah dimainkan dengan harmonis sebagaimana Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM mengupayakan penerapan proses bisnis dari hulu ke hilir atau end-to-end digital transformation. Dengan semangat sinergi dan kolaborasi seluruh stakeholder, marilah kita sambut kebangkitan koperasi dan UMKM dalam menciptakan new economy value menuju Indonesia maju, mandiri, dan berdaulat. Ini era kita, ini era koperasi dan UMKM. Berubah digital.
Kesetaraan gender masih menjadi isu global yang bergulir di tengah masyarakat. Berbagai gerakan dalam memperjuangkan kesetaraan gender juga terus berkembang seiring dengan kemajuan zaman. Namun sayangnya, perempuan masih belum cukup terwakilkan dalam skala ekonomi global dengan berbagai bentuk diskriminasi yang dihadapi. Mulai dari peluang yang tidak memenuhi syarat, kurangnya akses keuangan, hingga bias gender, menjadi sekian dari bentuk diskriminasi yang sering dihadapi oleh perempuan, baik di Indonesia maupun dunia. Indonesia memiliki lebih dari 64 juta UMKM yang berkontribusi terhadap 60% PDB nasional, dengan 64% diantaranya adalah perempuan. Oleh karena itu, peningkatan peran perempuan pada UMKM juga perlu didorong dalam arus utama kebijakan, di mana perempuan tidak hanya ditempatkan sebagai pemain sekunder, tetapi menjadi pemain inti dalam keberlangsungan UMKM. Dalam kurun waktu 20 tahun terakhir, terdapat peningkatan terhadap jumlah usaha yang dipimpin oleh perempuan sebesar 114%, dengan fakta 62% pengusaha perempuan berusia antara 40 hingga 59 tahun. Data dari Kementerian Keuangan juga menyebutkan bahwa indeks inklusi keuangan perempuan di Indonesia mencapai 75,15%. Hal tersebut menjadi acuan bagi pemerintah dalam mendorong peningkatan inklusi keuangan perempuan demi terciptanya kesempatan yang sama bagi perempuan di bidang keuangan. Memperhatikan cross-cutting isu perempuan, Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM berkolaborasi dengan engagement group W20 dan B20 yang menjadi upaya agar lebih banyak perempuan memimpin, berpartisipasi, serta memiliki akses pada peluang bisnis dan ekonomi dengan mendukung UMKM yang dimiliki dan dikelola oleh perempuan. Melalui berbagai inisiatif, dukungan, dan gerakan yang terus berjalan, Empowering Women Entrepreneur Through Inclusive Business menjadi sebuah monumen kolaborasi antara Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM dengan Kementerian Pemberdayaan Perempuan dan Perlindungan Anak, W20, B20, Apindo, serta beberapa stakeholder lainnya untuk mewujudkan pemberdayaan wirausaha perempuan dalam mencapai tujuan Recover with Small and Medium Enterprises.
Pusat Layanan Usaha Terpadu atau PLUT KUMKM merupakan unit teknis yang memberikan layanan pendampingan usaha yang inklusif kepada koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha secara komprehensif dan terpadu. Dengan terbitnya Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 7 Tahun 2021 menunjukkan keberpihakan pemerintah terhadap koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha serta memperkuat peran PLUT KUMKM melalui pendataan UMKM, perizinan produk dan usaha, kemitraan, dan inkubasi melalui lembaga inkubator. PLUT KUMKM telah tersebar di 74 provinsi, kabupaten, dan kota. Melalui redesign program PLUT, diyakini akan menjadi akselerator pengembangan layanan PLUT menjadi rumah UMKM. New PLUT akan menjadi fondasi dalam membentuk ekosistem wirausaha muda, produktif, inovatif, dan berkelanjutan. Melalui program pusat konsultasi dan pendampingan, pusat pengembangan produk unggulan daerah, factory sharing, marketplace, public space, kompetisi PLUT, pendaftaran usaha dan perizinan UMKM dengan layanan yang diberikan yaitu coworking space, konsultasi bisnis dan pendampingan, promosi dan pemasaran, pelatihan teknis dan manajerial, inkubasi bisnis, perizinan dan sertifikasi usaha, seleksi atau kurasi, dan perluasan kemitraan. New PLUT, Rumah UMKM, dan Center of Excellence.
UMKM adalah kita. Dahulu orang bijak senantiasa yakin bahwa masa depan adalah milik mereka yang menyiapkan hari ini. Sampai saatnya semua yakin ketika hanya merekalah yang bekerja keras mampu membuktikan diri menjadi insan-insan yang tidak berada dalam kerugian. Saudaraku, begitulah hakikatnya perjuangan. Percayalah, proses sungguh tidak akan mengkhianati hasil. Jika engkau tidak yakin, sejenak tengoklah para pengusaha mikro dan kecil UMKM yang meniagakan hidupnya dengan semangat tinggi. Mereka adalah jiwa-jiwa yang meyakini bahwa bangsa kita bukanlah bangsa yang pemalas. Berabad lamanya kita menggantungkan diri pada mereka yang terus bergerak, bekerja, memutar roda perekonomian dengan tangan-tangan kecilnya, menjadi tulang punggung yang menumpu faktor pembagi dalam demografi. Akuilah, UMKM adalah nafas bangsa ini. Ada satu masa, bukan sekali dua kali, ketika industri ambruk, pabrik-pabrik menutup operasi, kantor-kantor mengurangi jumlah pegawai, hingga koridor gedung-gedung besar menjadi demikian sepi. Kemana larinya mereka yang tereliminasi jika UMKM tidak menyambut dan memeluk mereka tetap dengan asa yang menghubung tinggi? Pun saat pandemi yang memporak-porandakan kehidupan, jangan mudah lupa bahwa UMKM lah yang menjadi penyelamat bangsa ini. Meski nafasnya juga tersendat, terhantam badai pandemi yang dahsyat, namun para pejuang ini tetap gagah berani, tegak berdiri. Indonesia sepertinya inilah saatnya untuk berpihak pada pilar-pilar kecil yang nyatanya adalah fondasi perekonomian bangsa ini. Saatnya memperpanjang nafas mereka dan memulihkan sakit akibat pandemi karena mereka jualah bagian dari pemulihan ekonomi. Memulihkan UMKM adalah memulihkan bangsa. Mereka berhak akan BPUM, subsidi kur, hingga transformasi digital agar semangat tetap laju. Banggakan mereka dengan menjadikannya sebagai bagian dari kebanggaan kita. Banggalah akan karya mereka, sebab UMKM adalah kita.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am Muhammad Zulkaromi, who will be the master ceremony of the seminar Green Economy and Sustainable Businesses, which will be conducted online through streaming media, namely Webex, Zoom, and YouTube. Today's event is based on the appointment of Indonesia as the host of the 2022 G20 Summit. It carries the theme Sustainable Transition in MSMEs and the Development of Youth and Innovative Entrepreneurs. The Ministry of Cooperatives and SMEs also support this activity, the main target of recovery with MSMEs. Today's agenda is a form of support from the Ministry of Cooperatives and SMEs in supporting ongoing G20 activities. as well as part of being serious through initiatives in the manner of enabling direct economic locomotives to enhance recovery with MSMEs by creating an ecosystem which will encourage the inclusion of women on entrepreneurship role, increasing the involvement of MSMEs in the green economy, and accelerate business in digital era. As MSMEs account for about 70% global pollution, the path to green economy naturally requires MSMEs to engage more in change. In order to realize its commitment to support G20 priority issues, the Ministry of Cooperatives and SMEs invited several competent speakers to discuss the theme of today's event, which aims to get suggestions and input that can be turned into a policy recommendation. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's stand for a moment and sing the national anthem of Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up. Thank you, ladies and
Terima kasih banyak,
gentlemen. Please
Bapak dan
have a
Ibu.
seat.
Dipersilakan
The following
untuk duduk
agenda
kembali.
is the remarks from Mrs. Siti Aziza as a Deputy
Berikut ini
Minister
adalah
of
sambutan
Entrepreneurship
dari
of
Ibu
the
Siti
Ministry
Aziza
Cooperatives
selaku Wakil
and
Menteri
SMEs.
Kewirausahaan
Mrs. Siti
Kementerian
Aziza,
Koperasi dan UKM.
the floor is
Kepada Ibu
yours.
Siti Aziza, Wakil Menteri.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
The Honorable Minister of Cooperative and
terhormat,
SME,
Bapak Menteri
Eselon 1,
Koperasi
Eselon
dan
2
UMKM,
officials
Eselon
of
1 dan
Ministry
Eselon
of
2,
Cooperative and
serta
SME,
pejabat dari
Chair of
Kementerian Koperasi
B20
dan
Indonesia,
UKM, dan
distinguished
juga Ketua
speakers
G20
and
Indonesia,
guests,
Bapak dan Ibu
ladies and
berbicara,
gentlemen.
serta
Good
Bapak
evening.
Ibu sekalian.
Greetings
Selamat
from
malam
Indonesia.
dan salam dari
It is our
Indonesia.
great pleasure
Ini
to
adalah,
welcoming all of you
kebanggaan
to the
bagi saya
second
untuk menyambut Bapak dan Ibu
G20 side
sekalian
event
dalam
with the topic
acara
of
sampingan
green
G20
economy
dengan
and
topik
sustainable
ekonomi hijau
business.
serta bisnis yang
We all
berkelanjutan.
recognize
Dan
the
kita
importance
juga
role of
memahami
SME to
pentingnya
lift our
UKM
economy,
untuk
as
meningkatkan
SME
ekonomi
are
kita.
the backbone of
Sebagaimana
economy.
ini
In
adalah
Indonesia,
tulang punggung dari
SME
ekonomi
absorb
kita. Di Indonesia
96%
tentu saja
of
kita
workforce,
mengetahui bahwa
contributing
ini
61%
menyerap 60%
to
dan juga
Indonesia
berkontribusi
GDP,
dari
which
GDP
contribute
atau PDB
to
Indonesia,
Indonesia's
dan juga
economic
berkontribusi
growth
terhadap
significantly.
pertumbuhan ekonomi di Indonesia secara signifikan.
The underprivileged are more
Dan kita
vulnerable to the
melihat
effect
bahwa
of
tentu
climate
saja
change, such as
Kerentanan
flood,
ini diakibatkan
violent
seperti
weather,
perubahan iklim
and
seperti
other
banjir
catastrophic
dan juga
events.
kejadian-kejadian
The COVID-19
bencana
pandemic
lainnya. Pandemi
has risen the
COVID-19
importance of
baru-baru ini
crisis readiness.
menghadapi
Therefore, we
kesiapan
have to put an effort
krisis.
in
Maka dari
promoting
itu kita harus membuat
sustainable
sebuah usaha
and assessing
dan
environmental
juga bagaimana
impact to the economy.
caranya mengakses, mencari dampak dari hal ini. Dengan kondisi ini, transisi ekonomi hijau yang berkelanjutan sekarang menjadi lebih penting daripada sebelumnya. Dan
Gains, since SME plays an important part in our economy.
tentu saja ini memainkan peran penting
Ladies and
dalam
gentlemen,
perekonomian kita.
several
Bapak dan
MSMEs
Ibu,
in Indonesia
yang
in the
terdapat
region
beberapa UMKM
have
di
adopted
Indonesia
green
di daerah
economic
telah
practices
mengadopsi
with the
praktis
local
green
wisdom.
economy dengan kearifan lokal.
Various
Berbagai
businesses
bisnis
such as
seperti
art
produk
products,
seni dan
clothing
juga
made by
pakaian
recycled
dari bahan
materials,
daur ulang,
production
serta
of
produksi
environmentally
kemasan ramah
friendly
lingkungan,
packaging,
makanan
plant-based
berprotein,
protein
berbasis
foods,
tanaman,
and
dan
other
lain-lain
are starting to
sudah
grow
mulai
in
tumbuh di
various
berbagai
regions,
daerah.
along with the trend
Seiring
of
dengan
green
tren
investment
investasi
in Indonesia,
hijau di Indonesia,
and the world
dan
has
juga
begun to
dunia
increase.
sudah mulai meningkat
Sustainable
tentunya.
business is also
Bisnis
present
yang
as a
berkelanjutan
solution
juga hadir sebagai salah
in
satu
an effort
solusi
to
dalam
reduce
upaya
the negative
mengurangi
impact
dampak negatif
of resource
eksploitasi
exploitation
sumber daya dalam
on the
pertumbuhan
industrial
industri
growth
di
in Indonesia and to support the
dan,
achievement of the
mendukung
SDGs.
pencapaian SDGs.
To speed up the progress
Untuk
on the
mempercepat
SDGs,
kemajuan dari
we need to
SDGs,
strengthen
kita harus
our
memperkuat
collaboration
kolaborasi dan
and
juga
engagement
keterlibatan
with many
kita dengan
stakeholders,
banyak pemangku kepentingan,
including private
termasuk
sectors,
sektor swasta,
NGOs,
LSM
research
atau NGO,
institutions,
lembaga
as well as
penelitian, dan
other
juga serta
ministries
kementerian
and
dan
agencies
lembaga
for the
lainnya
green
untuk
economy
implementasi
implementation
ekonomi hijau
for
dalam
small
usaha
and
kecil
medium
dan
enterprises. Therefore,
Maka dari
with this
itu,
seminar, we
dengan
hope
seminar
that we
ini,
can
saya
discuss
harap bahwa kita
more
bisa
on
berdiskusi
green
lebih
economy
banyak
and
mengenai
sustainable
ekonomi hijau
business.
dan juga
And I'm
bisnis
looking
yang
forward
berkelanjutan.
to the
Tentunya
beneficial
saya menantikan
outcomes.
hasil diskusi
I hope
yang
we all
baik
could
dari
have
acara
a,
ini. Saya
a
harap
successful and fruitful
acaranya
event.
berjalan lancar
Good
dan
evening
sukses.
and thank
Selamat
you.
malam dan terima kasih banyak.
Thank you, Mrs. Siti Aziza.
Terima kasih
Second,
banyak ke Ibu
let us
Siti
listen to
Aziza.
the remarks
Baik,
from
sekarang kita
Mrs.
akan
Sinta
mendengarkan
Kamdani
pidato
as a
dari
B20
Ibu Sinta
Indonesia Chair.
Kamdani selaku,
Mrs. Sinta,
selaku Ketua
the floor
G20
is yours.
Indonesia. Ibu Sintia, waktu dan tempat dipersilakan.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Teten Mas Buki, Minister of Cooperative and SMEs of the Republic of Indonesia, all invited speakers and attendees, good evening and thank you for having me. We must be proud that Indonesia has been trusted to lead the G20 process this year. And we as business communities must work hand in hand to support our government. That is why B20 here represent the voices of business community supporting the G20 with impactful and actionable policy recommendation. We foster more dialogue and cooperation between the public and private sectors. Many people may have forgotten how other stakeholders in the business sector like SMEs are playing an instrumental part as well. Talking about green economy, there are three ways I can see it intertwining with relation with SMEs. First, SME accelerate our support to global efforts on climate change, from limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius degree achieving net zero economy, ending fossil fuel production and reliance, and reducing climate impacts to the society. It requires a collaborative effort involving SME as government worldwide have started to regulate its climate commitment. The goals will be achieved with business compliance and great height, and in many instances, as SMEs are playing its part. But today, we all can see how SME have involved in green economy sectors, from industry and manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and energy. Emission reduction is one of the processes that stimulates a better output to our environment, and given to the scale of SME in Indonesia, also across the G20 economies, their conversation to less emitted production and business activity is crucial. In the B20 policy recommendation, we are also very much aware of the necessity to push for SME access to finance that helps their process in building a greener business. Second, SME play a bigger role to drive the global adaptability to economic transformation. The world is anticipating the changes in business supply and demand, capital allocation, and spending, production costs, business model and governance, and state of jobs due to a massive green transformation. Small and medium businesses, which are very close to the societal changes, are able to reflect the best strategy for economic transformation, showing what has gone wrong and what has done right. Especially with the large percentage of SME in numerous developing economies in the G20, such as Indonesia, India, China and Brazil, and many others. Our future global economic transformation will be well equipped with a considerable and reliable overview. Aligned with the main theme of B20 Indonesia this year, advancing innovative, inclusive, and collaborative growth, involving SMEs implies two entangled G20 economic policy objectives: inclusive growth and green growth, social well-being, and environmental footprint. Third, greener SMEs will improve our business presence among customers. The recent study by IBM Institute for Business Value showed that sustainability has reached a tipping point where consumers increasingly embrace social and environmental causes in their consumptions. As what I have been professionally doing in my business and my colleague at the Indonesia Business Council for Sustainable Development, our consistent stance on sustainability efforts will boost our consumer trust and eventually lead to more value-driven business transactions. It adds the competitive advantage for SMEs and eventually make a profitable business for them. One last important note, we wish to integrate and even strengthen the partnership under the B20 framework. At our B20 Indonesia, we will have legacy plan on net zero commitment, including through carbon market excellence, also some others that embrace women entrepreneurs and small businesses, also the digitalization of SME. Therefore, I'm very delighted to see more of your support to this B20 work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinta Kamdani. Furthermore, let us listen to the direction and remarks from Mr. Teten Masduki as the Minister of Cooperatives and SMEs of Republic of Indonesia, as well as opening today's event. To Mr. Teten, the floor is yours.
The Honorable Chairwoman of B20, Deputy for Entrepreneurship, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, greeting from Indonesia. First of all, I would like to deliver my sincere appreciation to all participants who can join to discuss green economy and sustainable business post-pandemic. Over the last 2 years, SMEs experienced decreasing demand and production. Surviving to the new condition we have, Despite many experts to adapt, there is still 41% of SMEs experience in decreasing in income. A study from the World Economic Forum 2020 estimates that the transition to a green economy can generate business opportunities, and there will be many jobs around the world which are expected to turn into green jobs, which could generate 10 trillion US dollar in business opportunities and 395 million jobs by 2030. The pandemic we faced for 2 years has pushed the importance of crisis preparedness, in which we must assess to the environment impact and sustainability of business in Indonesia. This is what we know as a green economy. We realize many businesses are usually reluctant to adopt green economy, as they see this as a complex technical matter with high production costs, which is simply untrue. According to research, the better use of resources within the industry is expected to have overall saving by more than 600 billion per year in Europe alone. The practice of green economy has to be implemented to both existing and new business in different industrial sectors, from their production process, product, up to the management in the business itself, which means it would also have the sustainability factor of their business. Adapting to green economy might seem challenging, but possible, as many of local SMEs are already practicing this with the traditional value and local wisdom. Furthermore, adapting into green economy will open to a wide new range of market and business. Given the importance of SME in pushing the green economy agenda, we would encourage more investment for business to adopt the practices, as it will provide a job-intense economic and resilient recovery, and to advance the sustainable development goal that we have been focused on. I wish today discussion will provide recommendation for green economy and sustainable business, so Indonesia can adopt it into policy, strengthen our national sustainability for crisis, and further caring about the environment. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a successful event.
Thank you, Mr. Ted and Mas Duki. With the speech delivered by the Minister, hereby the event is officially opened. And please allow me to remain to Mr. Mas Duki to remain your position. And I would like to cordially invite the Deputy Minister of Entrepreneurship, General Secretary of Ministry of Cooperative and SMEs to join us for the photo session. And allow me to adjust the position so we can look into the feed to the monitor. And let's have a look to the main camera. We are going to take a picture on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And let's have a second picture. Please remove your mask if you wouldn't mind. Just for a while, I guess that it's not a problem. And let's have a picture with a big smile to take the moment. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. And at this moment, I would like to cordially invite the speakers, both on-site and online, to join me for a group photo session. And the participants who are online can immediately activate the video to be able to take part in the current group photo session. While we are adjusting the position, and please main camera in front of, and we thank you very much. We believe that the core message would enhancing our main objective, supporting SDGs to recover MSMEs, especially during this time. Before we get into our main event today, let's watch the following video that will explain a little about the theme raised. Ladies and gentlemen, let us enjoy the video.
The COVID-19 pandemic has raised the importance of crisis preparedness in promoting sustainable and assessing environmental impact to the economy. Taking the momentum of Indonesia's G20 presidency in 2022, the Indonesian Ministry of Cooperative and SMEs took the initiative to carry out the second seminar on the main topic of the sustainable business process of SMEs and its contribution to sustainable development goals. The aim of the G20 activities is creating a productive, inclusive, and sustainable economy as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic situation. SMEs are an essential driver of economic growth, which managed to contribute 60% to the national economy. If the growth is dominated by the principles of the green economy, it will create a more competitive economy and improve the quality of life. SMEs still leave a high carbon footprint of 70% due to the lack of comprehensive awareness of the benefits. SMEs are urgently needed to change, but the challenges are about the reluctance in implementing them, which will require complex costs and techniques. However, with the right practice according environmental, social, and governance standards, the green economy implementation will bring benefits to SMEs in the form of cost efficiencies, resources, and open up the opportunities for investment that will help entrepreneurs to survive and thrive. Challenges in practicing green economy can be minimized by empowering the local communities to also improve their quality of life. To accelerate the adaptation of green economy, it's necessary to give environmental awareness, financial support, skills, market access, and also the application of green taxation. To manifest the green economy adaptation for SMEs in Indonesia, the Indonesian Ministry of Cooperative and SMEs will cooperate with engagement groups that take part in the green economy, namely Business of 20 or B20, and also Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. This seminar aims to discuss the role of SMEs in realizing inclusive and environmentally friendly business growth. Also, the certainty about the sustainability, the competitive aspects of SMEs that have implemented green economy principles, and also government roles in prioritizing green economy principle in policies for SMEs. Ladies and gentlemen, let us represent to you the quarterly second seminar of side event G20, with the title of Green Economy and Sustainable Business.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to wait any longer. Let's get into our event today, namely the seminar Green Economy and Sustainable Business. Our whole discussion session today will be moderated by Ms. Andita Utami. She is an environmental economist and co-founder of Think Policy Indonesia. She has conducted various research and analysis to make economic case for climate justice in Indonesia, focusing on green economy, opportunities, and low carbon development transition. Without further ado, let's start with our first session, Best Practice of Green Economy. For the first session, I will introduce today's speaker. The first speaker is Maria Cristina Sanchez Guerrero, or Chrissy. She is a senior advisor for strategic program, non-timber forest product exchange program, or NTFPEP of Asia. And the second speaker is Matilda De Silva, founder, CEO of Ocean Purpose Project from Singapore. So that was a brief explanation about our speakers for the first session. And now I invite you, our moderator, Ms. Andita Utami. The stage is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen. When we hear the phrase green economy, we usually associate it with big industrial companies transitioning towards low carbon pathway. But doing so would mean that we're ignoring a big piece of the puzzle, namely the small and medium enterprises. Now, green economy is usually associated with high production costs and sophisticated technical expertise that MSMEs often couldn't afford. That is why it is my pleasure for you tonight to be your moderator in highlighting some of the stories from the trailblazers, pioneer, leaders, and entrepreneurs, which shows that the impossible can be done. We will start the first session by highlighting stories from the region, from Asia and Singapore, and then we will continue with a deep dive on stories coming from Indonesia, and we will end with a session discussing the policy recommendations that our G20 leaders can bring forward. It is my pleasure to give the floor, firstly, to Chrissy Guerrero to share her story from NTFP EP Asia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Afu, for introducing me. Thank you also to the Ministry of Cooperatives and Small Medium Enterprises. It is my honor as well to be joining you this evening. I'd like to share, especially tonight, about the forestry sector, the natural environment, green economy, as well as inclusive growth. And that will be the line that I'll be discussing about tonight. May we go to the next slide, please? Oh, and I'd just like to also say that I represent the Parara Indonesian Ethical Store, which is also a marketing platform for fair trade and sustainable products, which I'll be discussing later. So as mentioned, I'll be discussing forestry. 50% of all of ASEAN is on forestry land, and in Indonesia especially, forestry products are very important to the economy. But just to explain that I'll be discussing about community-based non-timber forest products and their enterprises. And for the definition, these are all biological materials other than timber, which are extracted for human use. As you'll see on the screen, several examples that you're familiar with: forest fruits, vines, resins, natural dyes, forest honey, palms, essential oils. All of these are non-timber forest products. Next slide, please. Many people think of the forest and only see the trees. But actually, the trees and the timber is only 10% of the whole forest ecosystem. And 90% of the forest ecosystem are all of these thousands of other species that exist in the understory. And that's why I believe that they deserve they deserve a place in tonight's discussion. NTFPs are also contribute from 22 to 28% to household income of close to 1 billion people. So it's a large contribution that often goes missed. Next slide, please. Our NGO, which is a collaborative network supporting community-based forestry producers in sustainable forest management and also in their livelihoods, we do our best to make sure that there's food security so that this doesn't compete with enterprise activities. We support capacity building. I'm sorry, I'm not yet done with the slide before. Can we go back? Thank you. We also assist in marketing activities, and we're promoting the triple bottom line, which is not only profits and sustainability concerns, but also inclusive growth and making sure the marginal sectors are served as well. Through training programs, through fora, and through green intermediaries who assist in marketing. So you'll see in the bottom of the slide, the green intermediaries which we have established in Cambodia, in the Philippines, and Indonesia. We also coordinate with research agencies and different ASEAN bodies in supporting over 1,000 enterprises across the region. Next slide, please. I know in reading the material for this evening that a lot of the material is about the brown environment, and I'd like to take a step back and talk about how the green environment also is being degraded, and therefore we need to focus on conserving and healing the green environment that presents lots of products for our consumption. The destructive fishing practices, climate change, land conversion that's resulting in biodiversity loss, and the lack of incentives for our own traditions and food, and the easy access of processed foods. So these are the different threats and the dynamics that exist in our society. Next slide, please. So I'd like to provide some best practices, since this is the best practice session. A few from Asia and some from Indonesia as well. This is the Adimalai Producer Company in India. They just recently won the UN Equator Prize. They're a wholly owned indigenous company of 1,609 shareholders that market a diversity of products. They have 4 value addition centers where mostly women are producing, as you can see on the screen, soaps from forest honey and many other products, coffee, nuts, cereals, gooseberry candy, everything. And where they're also plowing their investment back into their business, and their sales have reached almost $200,000 in the last year. Next slide, please. I travel now to the Philippines for 2 examples. This is a largely women-based enterprise focusing on wild cinnamon and also on citronella oil within their ancestral domain, representing the Higaonon people. They're very much working on sustainable harvest protocols. There's no felling and clear cutting of cinnamon trees, no pesticide use, and they're working as well with the government and green intermediaries to partner with larger private sector personal care companies to bring their products out into the market. Next slide, please. Similarly, this enterprise on the island of Palawan markets a diversity of products as well, but very much from the resin tree called Agathis philippinensis. They as well follow the strict protocols of harvest and land use and management. They've been able to integrate the indigenous structure and the youth to harmonize their systems and capitalize on the innovations of the youth. They're able to link directly with natural paint and varnish manufacturers to get the best margins for their indigenous group, and they've been able to capacitate their leaders. Next slide, please. I know there's a session later in Indonesia, but they're just 2 good Indonesian examples that I have to share. This one is on rattan. Indonesia supplies 80 to 90% of all the rattan in the world, but the prices for farmers are depressed. So we try to build a system where buyers in Europe and in other places can see the traceability, the sustainability, and the legality within the system and find trust in it. So we've started coordinating with European manufacturers of, say, flower baskets who are willing to pay for this certification system. so that they can increase the price as well and conserve forests. The last example, next slide please. The last example is the Parara Indonesian Ethical Store here in Kemang. It's a model of green and inclusive growth. It's a business that is owned by farmers, women fishers, women in small business, indigenous cooperatives, activists, chefs, that are trying to promote the kind of counter-narrative to alternative and sustainable living, and especially food systems. There is hope to expand this concept in several areas. Next slide, please. This is a fair trade platform that is based on conservation, culture, and local traditions, promoting 4 basic values: local, sustainable, healthy, and fair. So making sure that we're not only looking at how green the product is, but making sure those that make it are fairly paid, have good working conditions, and their cultures are respected. And we're hoping to bridge the gap that exists between rural and urban areas. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here are all the different organizations that are invested in the business or supporting producers in the business. And there are over 100 local producers that are supported with the vision to expand similar stores and similar marketing platforms across the archipelago, so that not only those of the capital city are able to appreciate and become healthy and be part of this movement. Next slide, please. I think there are only about 2 left. So these are examples of the food that we have. We have the soto banjar using sago noodles, gluten-free and forest fire-free noodles, lasagna that's made of sorghum pasta with tuna, a sustainable tuna, and also sorghum wrap and wild raspberry jam that's made in the foothills of the Kerinci Seblat National Park. So we're hoping to deliver interesting menus to provide an attractive offering to others in the city. And I think I have a last slide. Yeah, I know the policy recommendations is for later, but this also answers the question of initiatives that can further along green economy and inclusive growth. So of course, public procurement and incentives for private sector procurement, green and inclusive business models, especially in not only national settings, but in rural settings where you lower the carbon footprint, partnerships across the supply chain, participatory eco-labeling systems, simplification of regulations, and cross-sector, cross-ministry collaboration, as well as linkages and access to appropriate finance. So I might have gone over time, apologies for that, but thank you for the time that I've been able to deliver my message.
Chrissy, thank you so much. That was really comprehensive and very fascinating. I just learned tonight, together with all the audiences, that there is a wholly owned by the indigenous community enterprise in India. There are stories of women-led enterprise. I think we'll circle around, and I might have some questions in terms of some of the challenges. But before that, we will move on perhaps to our next speaker. So from the beautiful green forest, we will now go into the oceans and have Matilda share with us the story of Ocean Purpose Project based in Singapore. Matilda, are you already with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, we can hear you. So the screen is yours, please. We can't wait to hear your story as well.
Thank you very much. Do you want to just share the slides?
Yes, I believe that the slides are already there, or maybe the organized. Yes, there you go.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, let's stay on slide 1. I've got a couple of questions for everyone. How do governments implement green and blue economy objectives with strong operational and infrastructural rollout? How can Indonesia turn its plastic pollution into the fuel of the future? How can an NGO upgrade itself from activist to solution engineer with concrete efforts based on science, indigenous, and community involvement? Okay, so we'll stay on this slide. Let's go back to slide 2, sorry. Please go back to slide 2. Thank you. So I'm Matilda De Silva. I'm the founder of Ocean Purpose Project. A very warm welcome and selamat sejahtera to all distinguished guests from G20. I thank you humbly for allowing me to share our work with you. Today I'll share a slice of the future, Ocean Purpose Project's proposal to answer these questions that I just asked you and talk you through Hydro Hadapan, our proposal to the UNDP Indonesia to realize His Excellency President Joko Widodo's mandate to turn Lombok into one of the 10 new Bali initiatives, transforming Lombok's Mandalika plastic waste into hydrogen and other profitable products. Okay, next slide. Now, Ocean Purpose Project is a certified social enterprise that is based in the beach town of Pasir Ris in Singapore. I started it in 2020 after I fell sick from exposure to polluted water. Today, Ocean Purpose Project protects the oceans through tech innovations like plastic to fuel, bioremediation, and bioplastics, as well as with social innovations like behavior change. Our award-winning team aims to solve the plastic crisis in Mandalika with tech and social innovation. We work with government agencies around the world to create end-to-end strategies for oceans with high operational feasibility. I think that's the key topic that we are speaking about today. Next slide. Now, over the past weeks and even today, it's very clear that plastic pollution, not just in Mandalika or in Indonesia or in Singapore, has nothing to do with floating PET bottles at sea, but has everything to do with people. At the regional and local government level, it's difficult to connect the dots between jobs, industry, and sustainability. Residents and NGOs have great recycling efforts, but funding and scaling up is really tough. Plastic overuse, landfill, washing into oceans, and toxic plastic burning is overwhelming because people don't know any better. Meanwhile, NGOs do not have access to the latest scientific research, while industry continues with business as usual. And so, to hack the plastic problem, first we must hack the people problem with tomorrow's technology today. Next slide, please. Presenting Ocean Purpose Project's Hydro Hadapan, which is about turning Mandalika's plastic problems into solutions. Now, Hydro Hadapan answers the regional and local government's pain points by turning plastic into hydrogen, harnessing the great Indonesian creativity of every person on the island to ideate and be a part of an end-to-end process, starting with plastic cleanups and ending as fuel in hydrogen fuel cells that power the motorcycle races of the future in the MotoGP. Next slide. Here is how it works. Next slide, please. Hydro Hadapan starts with unique paddling and surf events that combine ocean and beach cleanups as part of the sport itself, with the top water sport superstars collecting ocean plastic. Now, as an ex-Singapore idol, I can mobilize my friends, top Indonesian music stars, to work with local youth and create songs about ocean conservation while mobilizing hotels, F&B, and schools to collect and segregate the plastic waste. Next, we partner with local NGOs on ground to drive community education in that language while collecting, sorting, and cleaning plastic waste to send to us. Now, here comes the exciting part. The plastics that are sent to our Ocean Purpose Project plastic to hydrogen units can be converted into hydrogen, ready for the top MotoGP teams like Hyundai or Segway to create the world's first e-bike race. At this point, I'm sure many of you are wondering, did she just say that Ocean Purpose Project can convert plastic into hydrogen? Yes, we can, and let me show you how. Next slide. Last year, the UNDP Indonesia team sent us 1 kilogram of unwashed plastics collected in Mandalika. The results run by Ocean Purpose Project's research partners in Nanyang Technological University of Singapore were astounding. A high concentration of hydrogen was found. That is the stuff that our lead engineer Richard is holding in the silver bag. Even better, the byproduct of this conversion is carbon nanotubes, which is highly conductive and perfect for use in a hydrogen fuel cell. Best of all, it's high value. So, for example, I could have earned $15 with the box of plastics that you sent me with mechanical recycling. But through the solution that we are proposing, you can actually earn much, much more. Just take a look at the price point that is listed on the slides. We're talking in the thousands. And of course, in a year, this can work out to about $3.5 million worth of products. Next slide, please. Now, although this is a very highly profit motive driven project, this is also about purpose and planet. Here are the UN SDGs that answer this solution. The solution we are proposing connects people, planet, purpose, and profit. But it's also very important for us to map impact. At the government and industry level, Hydro Hadapan drives sustainable jobs, not just in waste collection, but in energy creation and electric vehicles. The residents of Mandalika go from being islanders with a plastic problem to those who will become the innovators in plastic recovery, eventually training other coastal Indonesian islands about chemical recycling, and most of all, living in a healthier environment free of toxic fumes from burning plastic. Today, hydrogen is expensive, but Mandalika has the opportunity to lead the world in this futuristic ocean purpose project, with every man, woman, and child in Lombok working together. Next slide, please. Last year, the green hydrogen market was valued at 0.8 billion USD. In just 6 years' time, this will jump to $10.2 billion. Now, such a project is not just about balancing profit and purpose. It is also about driving very vital partnerships with clear sustainable and industrial goals that leverage off infrastructure from every single aspect of our partnerships. This project, for example, brings the best of our research teams, for example, in Singapore with Nanyang Technological University, but also brings diverse expertise from sectors such as engineering, fuel cell, broadcasting, finance, hydrogen, as well as polymers. Now, we also work with our Indonesian partner and brand ambassador, PT Green Energy Biosolutions, which bring years of their expertise in palm oil biofuels technology to the project. Next slide, please. I'm sure many of you are also asking yourselves, this sounds like very futuristic and a nice pipe dream. Beautiful slides, but can it be done? Now, recently, Ocean Purpose Project launched a smaller version of Hydro Hadapan in Singapore called Race for Oceans. With extensive sponsorships, we were able to mobilize not just the research community or even the industrial community, but fishermen, NGOs, musicians, and of course our ministers as well, who paddled, cleaned, and even sang with us to go off and create an end-to-end solution that created hydrogen at the end. Next slide, please. Now, I know all of us, or you can go back to the previous slide. I know all of us know of many high-level solutions.
Oh, Matilda, sorry, I'm going to have to cut you because we only have 7 minutes for each speaker. We still have quite a lineup after this. So thank you so much for that story. I'll give you a final 1 minute at the end for a closing statement, but I'm sure that the audience joining us on Zoom, WebEx, and YouTube already learned a lot. It's such a fascinating story. You just told us that you turn waste into hydrogen. I mean, that's fascinating. So tonight we hear both ends of the spectrum, like one in terms of how we can create alternative livelihoods to reduce pressure on forests, but we also learn about how technology can help solve a marine plastic problem. I have just one question that we already received from our online audience, which is quite a big one. I think this audience, unfortunately, I think they forgot to put their name, but how did you get the financing that's required to start your venture in the first place? I mean, looking at it from the community perspective, from NTFP, but also Ocean Purpose Project. Maybe, Chrissy, you want to start?
Many of the communities, like the one we showed from Palawan, they're a cooperative, so they have their own capital. Of course, it's limited, so we also are linking them up with different financing institutions. Many of the forest product communities do need capacity building in the beginning, and therefore there is some grant funds that we're also able to source from various institutions until they're ready and mature to be able to receive other kinds of financing.
There you go. So really a blended kind of different sources of financing. What about Ocean Purpose Project?
That's a fantastic question. part of the difficulty that we have is that the solutions that we are proposing are really expensive. So, for example, to convert plastic into hydrogen and to launch a prototype machine costs between $2 million to $10 million Singapore. So this is also where one of the difficulties that we have is that we are proposing something that is very futuristic, very new, and requires a lot of partnership and innovation. And so what we've been doing is on our own, with sponsors and also with our own bootstrap money. We are totally self-funded. A lot of the work that we are doing also is to create little mini projects that allow us to test bed how this would work. So, we are very lucky to be able to have, customers in the maritime sector, who are like, okay, let's try something. Let's explore on a very, very small scale in order for us to create case studies that then garner interest at a national level, like what we are doing today.
Thank you so much for that answer. Now, before we move on to the next session, perhaps 30-second, 1-minute closing statement. We will start from Chrissy again.
Thank you, Apu. I'd just like to ask the audience, maybe because our choices in terms of our consumption have direct impacts on the environment, and maybe more responsible thinking about how these products are made and who makes them will lead us to responsible actions that can help conserve and heal the planet that we all share, and also keep our people and the society healthy and safe and in harmony.
I love it. On to you, Matilda.
Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me? So I think on my end, we always get a lot of feedback that, this high-level solution, it sounds very great, but tell me, how is this going to materialize? One of the key things for us at Ocean Purpose Project is that even though we are small and we are maybe, very young, it really also is about looking at crisis and pollution issues from a fresh new perspective, involving different industries such as sports, music, education, science, that were not involved in the conversation before. And it's also about us not just focusing on the tech or just promoting us as Singaporean NGO. It's about rallying the entire community together, exchanging ideas like what we are doing today, sharing with each other, understanding, different viewpoints, also understanding government's viewpoints, strategic thrusts, and how we can go off and basically achieve all of those objectives together with the private and the public sector and the NGO sector. So I'm a futurist. I don't like to just dream about it, but like to take the action as well. So I think, that's the key message that I would like to leave with everybody today.
Thank you so much. I think we, all of us, the audience here in this room and joining us online, would agree that firstly, for us as consumers of some of these products as well, to be more mindful in terms of our impact on the planet. And then what Matilda emphasized further, which is that maybe there's also the importance of looking at the problem differently, having a fresh perspective, and working with stakeholders. Thank you so much, Chrissy and Matilda, for joining us tonight. And I will give the screen back to the MC.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot of information and experiences that we can take from the discussion earlier. Such a lovely and delightful discussion session. And now, let's get into next session where we will discuss Indonesia best practice on sustainable business. At this moment, I would like to present you a brief profile of information about our second discussion panel speakers. Currently, there are speakers for the second agenda, and our warmest welcome and good evening to first speakers, Mr. Hamis Daud, as the co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Octopus Indonesia, and the founder of Indonesian Ocean Pride. And the second speakers, Mrs. Irma Chantali, as partner Supernova and head of Curation Enablers from Koalisi Ekonomi Membumi. And the third is Mr. M. Pradana Indra Putra, Special Staff for National Entrepreneurship Improvement, Ministry of Investment of Republic Indonesia. And now I will return to our moderator today, to Ms. Andita Utami. The stage and floor is always yours.
Thank you for still tuning in with us. We are now entering the second session, the second part of the conversation, where we will dive even deeper into the examples and, again, inspiring stories from Indonesia. I've already been joined by 3 speakers tonight. 2 are with me here and one joining online. I think we'll start first by watching this video that Hamish brought us from Octopus. Perhaps we can show it on the screen.
Selama bergabung jadi pelestari, pendapatan saya alhamdulillah pernah sampai 4 juta dalam sebulan. Kemudian kalau mau dirata-ratain per bulannya sekitar 1 sampai 2 jutaan. Sebelum saya jadi pelestari, saya
cek sound, aman, cek, kedengeran?
Sebagai pemulung di jalan.
Cek sound, cek sound, aman, cek 1, 2, cek. Cek sound, cek 1. Cek sound, 1, 2, cek sound, 1, 2. Cek sound, 1, 2. Cek sound.
Ini cara dijelasin cara penggunaan aplikasi, cara ketemu.
Belum kasih jempol.
Waktu masih jadi pemulung, itu ngambil sampahnya di tempat-tempat yang kotor. Biasanya sih di tempat-tempat sampah yang di pasar. Bahkan juga ngambil sampahnya itu di bawah jembatan yang juga got. Terus sampah hasil pulung kadang ditolak sama pemulungnya. Kalau mau jadi pemulung lebih capeknya 2 kali sih. Jadi kita harus nyari kan, dikumpulin dulu, baru dipilah lagi, baru bisa dijual. Kalau jadi pelestari mah beda, lingkungan kerjanya lebih bersih dan gak perlu ngais-ngais di tempat sampah lagi. Kadang kalau ada motor pinjam punya kakak atau punya bapak, kalau lagi dipakai dua-duanya, saya pakai gerobak. Karena lingkungan kerja sekarang lebih bersih.
I pulled together, no, I can do that. I pulled together the smartest kids I could find, all Indonesian kids. I mean, masters in Berkeley, MIT, Harvard, everyone, all the smart kids. Just kind of, yeah, it was a good team. Everyone has something to bring to the table. It's really interesting. For 600 days of no sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supaya orang banyak yang menonton.
Octopus. Hamish, that was a very inspiring story. I think we listened directly from the people you're impacting through Octopus. Maybe like me, some of our audience are curious about in terms of how you came up with the idea. How did you start in the first place?
Okay, hi. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here. Yeah, look, I've grown up in the ocean. I've been an environmentalist for over a decade, and you know, just all the problems that we're doing with the reef rehabilitation, species preservation, there's none of that if the ocean is still full of plastic, So pulled together the smartest kids I could find, all Indonesian kids, and we pulled together this circular economy platform called Octopus. And it's been very, very exciting. It's been about 600 days of no sleep, but it's been good.
You sure it's only 600 days? All right, but so why are you approaching it from a social enterprise perspective? Because, there are different ways of solving the plastic issue. You can do beach cleanups and other ways, but why build a social enterprise and why Octopus?
Yeah.
What's your approach?
Okay, look, the beach cleanup, the campaigns for no single-use plastic, amazing initiatives. But once you collect the waste, what happens then? So we really thought about that through and through and really paid attention to the direction that the world was going towards. Digitalization, empowerment, education, women empowerment, and education, and just trying to make things transparent so that we can minimize waste going into the environment and into the ocean. We have the most biodiverse marine ecosystem on the planet here, and so I'm just trying my best to protect what we have.
Amazing. So I think a lot of people want to do what you did, in terms of actually solving the problems, developing a venture. But I think for a lot of people, one of the biggest challenges is probably how to sustain a business that might not be profitable at the first sight, right? There are probably, challenges, financing challenges and others. How has it been for Octopus?
I think the timing has been very good for us. We've gone through one of the hardest times of our generation, the pandemic, and I think it was also in our favor in a way where people started to become understanding of the waste that they were consuming. Because before you had breakfast and lunch and dinner, you'd leave your waste outside. And then for 2 years, people were ordering in and seeing how much was accumulated, and really after that wanted to be part of a change, leaving their finance jobs to become better environmentalists and so forth, and trying to give back more. And it was actually a really good time for us to execute this idea of giving back. And we tried to make it as simple as we could for everybody. Simply download our application. The service is free. It's in fact, we'll give you incentives. We'll pay you for recycling through us. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible and as attractive as possible. And we're just here to help.
Is it available on both iOS and Google Play Store?
Of course it is. Yep, and it's free, and we've rolled out in Makassar, Bali, Bandung, and we're about to roll out in Jakarta next week. So it's very exciting for us at the moment to come to the capital city of Indonesia.
Yeah, I must say that I also started using, unfortunately not Octopus, I might change after this, but trash. Of
course you'll change after this.
Yes, I have to, now I have to. But starting from pandemic, because I think before the whole working from home situation, we're less mindful about our waste, or we don't think we have control over it, because you put your trash at your office or on your way somewhere, but you don't really see how it mounts up, right? But as you're staying at home, you really see the amount of trash you're producing, and I think people started to realize that.
Yeah, it's, we also have to take into account that, we have 120,000 households using our service every day, and most of them are moms. Or rumah tangga, they're called, So we had to try to make it. Thanks for the translation. We had to make it as simple as we possibly could. A lot of moms don't like applications and tech and handphones, so we had to try to make it as attractive and as simple as possible for moms to use as well. In the West, moms love to cut out coupons and get discounts and get free coffees and free meals. We're the same here. So we've also created a system like that where you can redeem points through our app in order to get the discounted or the freebies, I said.
Yeah, I love this awareness on mothers being the really front runners and doing this change from their own households.
Yeah, well,
120,000 households already.
Well, yeah, well that's not. Yeah, well to cater for these households, we've also done I have to praise the team, a really good job in empowerment. So we have a subclass of scavengers, or the informal sector here called pemulung. Pemulung are the scavengers and the ones that live amongst our waste. And so we've empowered them, we've educated them, given them uniform, they have smartphones, they can go into gated communities, and we changed the name to Pelastari, which is Good Samaritan or environmentalist. Now we have 14,000 Pelastaris registered with us, all above minimum wage salary.
I mean, that's amazing, right? I've always thought that pemulung, or how do you call it now?
Pelestari.
Pelestari, right? Beautiful. Have plays such an important role, like in the waste management space. But somebody, I mean, like through Octopus, approaches like Octopus, you give them a more dignified way to, like in doing what they already been doing.
Isn't it about time?
Yeah.
You know, we see, old women, on the side of the street. I just wanted to clean that up and not have that anymore, and empower them, give them the time of day, train them, and they just look after them. So we created this, all dependent on private sector at this stage. So we created a system to empower them, and they've been the major stakeholder in what we're doing.
Amazing. I want to learn more, but I think the time.
That's okay. Thank you so much for having me.
For now, I'll circle back to you. But now we also have here Irma Chantali from Koalisi Ekonomi Membumi, or how would you translate that into English?
Well, basically just Ekonomi Membumi Collective.
So it's a collective. It's a collective that focuses on, roughly translated, earth economics in a way, or like
something
environmental.
Like that. I'll introduce you to it.
Yeah. Okay. You'll introduce that part. So without further ado, please take it home.
All right. Thank you so much, Afu. So allow me to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, with a term that is very Indonesian in spirit and in practice: ekonomi membumi, or grounded economy. Bumi in Indonesian language basically means Mother Earth. So ekonomi membumi, or grounded earth, actually means that an economy that tries to take care of the Mother Earth and everything that's living inside it. My name is Irma Chantili, and I'm a partner of Supernova Ecosystem. Supernova is part of this Ekonomi Membumi collective, which is a collective of dozens of organizations in Indonesia who tries to scale up sustainable businesses in Indonesia and to promote green investment. So I will share with you in my presentation that why Ekonomi Membumi is relevant for our current situation and challenges, and what we as a collective is trying to do and why we're doing it. Next slide, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a statement by Muhammad Hatta, our founding fathers and an economist, that he said that the soul of Indonesian people are full of a sense of community or collectivity. Before I worked for Supernova Ecosystem and dive into the sustainability issues, I used to work in arts and creative economy. And believe me, even though these artsy people, they don't really work directed through economy, they are still a collective. Everything is gotong royong, like doing everything together. So now you will encounter more and more of this collectivity, collaborations, and community as the big idea that we want to share with you. Next slide, please. Now, 16.1 billion loss is the total loss of Indonesia suffered in 2015 due to the severe forest and peat fire. Since then, obviously, the government have issued stricter policies and regulations. Companies try to do better with their sustainability pledges. Civil society have also become watchdog and provided technical assistance. However, implementation on the ground remains a struggle. Next slide, please. Part of the reason is because a lot of these initiatives are done individually, although in parallel. So even though there is a coordination between the actors, but it still didn't reach the level of collective action, where all stakeholders recognize the value proposition to work together towards the same goal. We all want the similar things for Indonesia, but yet working together is not as simple as it sounds. So to answer, next slide please. So to answer to this needs, I'm going to borrow the initiative launched by one of the collective member, or LTKL, or the District Association of Indonesia. It's called the Sustainable Economy Vision, focusing on supporting sustainable value-added industry that are community-based at all LTKL districts. So we believe that this approach would allow district stakeholders, like everyone, from the policymakers, private sectors, communities, NGOs, and most importantly, the youth, to feel like, to be excited about sustainability for a greater future instead of a burden. So under this vision, this is really a chance to build a success story with value proposition for everyone. Next slide, please. So when we dive into the supply chain issues, it's very apparent between the gap between the farmers and the market. It's a very common situation where we would find farmers can only sell their commodities at lower price, difficulties accessing the market. I mean, the previous speakers have mentioned this as well. So, and you also see product development or processes to add values are very limited and lacking. Meanwhile, for example, if we look at the market, the global health and wellness industry, for example, is expected to hit around 6,500 million by 2026. So how can we support the people, the community, and on the ground to tap into this market? The picture you see here, the ilipe nut, actually it's a very interesting commodity that has a characteristic similar to shea butter, but the utilization is very not yet widespread. Next slide, please. So, as you can see, there is a lot of this invisible ecosystem that if only imagine if we can work together collaboratively, then we can strengthen the ecosystem and grow together as well. Next slide, please. 99.99% of Indonesia business is MSME, and out of that 99%, 90% of it are micro scale businesses. But however, we also know that in order to reach that healthy growth, the small and medium scale is important. So how can we sort of scale these micro businesses and provide them with opportunities to grow, help the economy? Next slide, please. There's also been, the challenges have also been identified, as you can see here, lack of capital, difficulties in obtaining grant, shortage of managerial skills, etc. Because of that, we are trying to sort of understand where we're coming from and where we're going, and we understand that we are trying to reach the same goal. So hence, we are now a collective of dozens of organizations. It's a joint movement to encourage the growth of green investment ecosystem for large-scale businesses and MSME in Indonesia through a multi-stakeholders and inter-country cooperation approach. Next slide, please. And Supernova ecosystem, our expertise is basically in the accelerator and managing the fund. As you can see here, there is a chicken and egg problem between the SMEs that are not able to sort of scale, whether it's because of the governance or because product market fit, different reasons, but they cannot really get investment. And on the other side, money is there, but it's just very different ticket size from what's needed by the MSE. So this is what Supernova is trying to do. So I like to think it as like Batman and Bruce Wayne, where we sort of like, create this ecosystem. Next slide, please. Next slide again. So basically in accelerating this SBEs or SMEs, we're working with the management fund and to ensure the growth of the value chain from end to end. Next slide, please. This is just a brief explanation about what we're doing. We currently focus in Sintang, we work in ilipe butter and snakehead fish, and we aim to have more jurisdictions in the future. Next slide, please. So this is the collective, what we're doing. So basically there's three groups working in, one group is working on the sustainable or green indicators. And then we also curate the small, medium enterprises, and we curate also the enablers, the organization who enabled the condition for these SMEs to grow. So we also identify the investors, obviously. Next slide. This is our progress so far. We are going to actually hold a sort of business matchmaking or speed dating in Nusa Dua, Bali in just a couple of days. We have identified 40 SMEs which has been curated by the guidelines, by the Sustainable Indicators guidelines. We also invited 20 investors and 20 enablers, more or less. I think the number is growing by day. But this is going to be the first sort of tryout and experiment to see whether the Sustainable Indicators can be used to curate the SMEs. Next slide, please. This is the sort of the digital catalog. Yeah, digital catalog for the SMEs that has been curated. Next slide. Curated SMEs that we have. Next slide, please. And so here we also have 24 plus enablers, accelerators, incubators, blah, 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 who provide financial capital, social capital, and intellectual capital. So here we are, a group of organizations who are committed to create the enabling condition, which is the policy, regulation, governance, and the ability to report progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irma. I feel like as a moderator, I've been doing a really bad job at maintaining everyone to be in time, but partly because the stories are so important to be told and so fascinating. Thank you so much, Irma. We'll circle back to you, but now we already have Pak Pradana from Ministry of Investment. And I think a big piece of the question really is what then have the government been doing to help support some of these MSMEs, 90% of which apparently are micro and small. Pak Pradana, are you already with us? I think you're still muted. We still can't hear you, unfortunately. The team is working on the issue.
Okay, nice.
There you go.
So I couldn't myself. So first of all, thank you so much for the opportunities, Mbak Afu, Mas Hamish, and also Mbak Irma, that I'm very proud of to hear, what you have been presenting regarding the quality economy Bumi. And second of all, I would like to apologize because I just got back from Bali for the AVPN event, and I haven't reached home to get a better situations to present tonight. So first of all, actually, what we did this year is we already collaborate with the Koalisi Ekonomi Bumi to make a sustainable investment guidelines, or in Indonesia we call it as a Panduan Investasi Lestari. So because we are very aware that Mbak Afu, Mas Hamish, you guys are all environmentalists, and we are very aware that we are heading that directions. But the problem is, not everyone, not every business actors, not every MSMEs, can measure themselves, how to consider themselves as a green businesses, how to consider themselves as a sustainable businesses. So at least what we can do now is actually we want to make a guidelines, so it can be a one general indicators for foreign investors, domestic investors, for MSMEs, because we are very aware for sometimes there are a lot of funds, green funds, sustainable funds, you can name it, that are available, to business units in Indonesia. But we are very aware that most of our business units, which are MSMEs, again, they do not know how to measure themselves, how to get those monies. So at least, again, what we did and what we've been doing with Koalisi Ekonomi Bumi, that we want to make that sustainable investment guidelines. That's the first thing. And second of all is actually what we already did from 2 years ago. So in terms of sustainable investment, so now Ministry of Investment, we have like 3 foundations, right? So the first one is actually Investasi Tumbuh. The second one is inclusive investment, and the third one is investasi berkualitas. So, when me and Pak Bahlil, joining the ministry back then in 2019, we are very aware that BKPM at that time, or Ministry of Investment, people know BKPM only for the foreign investors, only for the foreign investments. But we think that those investments have to be more inclusive. I mean, in terms of inclusive context, I mean, it's regional disparity. So it has to be, more equal between Java and outside Java. And we are very grateful to this year, the first time that investment outside Java is bigger compared to the Java island. So it is like 52% to 48%. So that's the second thing. And the third one is we are talking about investasi berkualitas. So this investment have to spread equally among classes, So between big companies, medium scale companies, small scale companies, and even the micro scale companies, investment has to be spread among those all classes, right? So from 2 years ago, we are having we call it as a program kemitraan. So we encourage, or quote unquote, we push companies, especially big companies, huge factories in Indonesia, to have a partnership program, not CSR, not community development, but it's a supply chain partnership. So we want to make sure, MSMEs in the surrounding areas, they can, join the economic pie, right? They can feel the benefits, they can gain the profits from the investment that is happening in the surrounding areas. So those are the programs that we have been conducted for the last 2 years, and hopefully we can talk more, we can discuss more regarding the sustainable investment guidelines, because from what I know, and I saw the comments on the right hand side, that many people also want to join the koalisi ekonomi bumi. So mungkin Mbak Irma, you can respond to the to the permintaan dari a lot of people that want to join the koalisi ekonomi bumi. Maybe that's all. Thank you, Mbak Afu and Mas Hamish and Mbak Irma.
Quite insightful to better understand what the government has been doing, and I second the concern in terms of how the accessibility of a lot of this, like financing or investment across classes and maybe also like sizes of the business. I think, let's just use that one question, because I think a few are asking about how to join Octopus and some others how to join Koalisi Ekonomi Membumi. So maybe we can start with that question from both of you. Hey, Mish, you can start.
Maybe I can respond to Pradana a little bit.
Sure.
There was some good points that you pointed out there. I just want to make it clear that Octopus is a collaborative platform. I had to write down notes so I wouldn't miss your points then. So we're a service provider. We're not here to go against any large FMCG brands. We're here to provide a service. And the services that we provide is accurate data control. So we can provide real-time information so that to encourage companies to have proper EPR programs through us. So we're one of the most accurate reporting platforms in the country at the moment. So this is really exciting for us. We focus on also reverse logistics, where we supply through our training and through our pelestaris, our training, we supply the recycling industries with high quality recyclable goods. Meaning that we want to also prove a point that we do not need to make new bottles in Indonesia anymore. There's enough, and we are very capable of collecting from households and businesses in order to recycle and try to move away from virgin materials. Alongside that, we've created jobs during the pandemic. It's no longer shameful to be a informal sector waste collector. We've empowered them. Now we have teachers, people from university students. We have different industries from hotel industries leaving their jobs to become our pelestaris. Now we've provided jobs during the pandemic. We've created 14,000 jobs. And this is really exciting to create this subclass to middle class in less than a year, just because we gave them the time of day. Like I said, we're providing a service. We're here to create jobs, and not one item that we touch goes to the landfill. So this is very exciting for us to have that standard.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I can see that. I mean, you're really thinking big, right? I mean, you're starting, but I mean, I think it's exciting. 14,000 jobs and all of that. I still want to.
I see a long list of questions.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks for your questions. For your statements, Pradana.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think the first one you kind of touched on, because basically they're asking about how do you link what you're doing with this bigger movement in terms of like global collective action, and I think you've answered that. But again, just the second one, I think like this one is actually asking for a job. If I want to join Octopus, how do I do that?
It's very easy. You send your ID, and you can become a pelestari or one of our collectors in less than half a day. It's just, we have to have this protocol of safety, because for the first time, households are dealing with the pelestaris coming to the house. Yeah. Before, traditionally, we put our waste, our rubbish in front of the house, and then we don't want to know about it. For the first time, they're coming into our homes, and this is an interaction that we have to ensure the safety and the experience for our users. So we have to have the identification, the training, and all that kind of stuff. So that takes about half a day.
There you go, me from NTB. Hopefully that answers your question. Again, also for Policy Economy Movie, maybe you can answer the same question?
Yay, the more the merrier. So because it's a collective and it's an informal one, I mean, we all basically have the same vision of how Indonesia should be, more sustainable businesses. And basically just get in touch with one of us in the collectives. You can get in touch with me through this event or through anyone on the organization in the collectives.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think the sense that I'm getting from the comments is that people want to contribute, right?
Yeah.
They want to find ways, doors, entry points for them to do something.
It's so true. It's so exciting. It's not like people wake up in Indonesia and like, oh, you know what, I'm going to pollute our ocean. It's because they don't know how to take care of their waste. There hasn't been a system, in my opinion, that's effective, that's circular, that helps people and benefits people. So this is where Octopus comes in to really provide a service for everybody.
Yeah, great. I think because we're already over time, I'm going to move to this closing statement, basically, from all three of you in terms of, so again, going back, I think a lot of people want to contribute in the space. They want to do something, maybe start their own business or joining what's already out there. What's your one short 20-second message for them? I'll start actually this time from Pradana first, and then
ladies
Irma,
first.
and then
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, maybe Irma first then, in that case, ladies first.
Okay,
that was right.
Yeah, you were right. Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is my personal dream, yeah. In terms of business as usual, I want to see business as usual as the businesses that are sustainable, that are environmentally friendly and provide social welfare for the people. So that's my personal dream, and I think when we're talking about sustainability and more sustainable business, I think that's the aim, right? And there are plenty of ways to join the movement. You can do it on your own. You can reach out to us, to me, to Afu, to Hamish, obviously. Just reach out and we can discuss what we can do together and collaborate. Gotong royong.
Yeah. So part of your dream basically is a world where what Hamish is doing is considered normal.
Yes.
It's not special.
Yeah, it's not special.
Just everyone.
It shouldn't be special.
No,
it should be normal.
We're in it
Why
together.
are we inviting
We're
you?
in it together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There you go. Pa Pradana, are you already?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Abu. So, first of all, again, we're aware that sometimes the government, our jobs, we are not engaged very well with stakeholders. And now, regarding this economy, making guidelines, we are working with the policy and economic review. We started from KADIN back then, and then moving on to other NGOs, now we are very interested working with you guys. And second, actually, regarding the partnership program, and more because during the 2 years partnership program, we already succeed in making a partnership in supply chain up to 4.2 trillion rupiah, and we're hoping now for 2022 the numbers reach for 5 trillion rupiah in terms of supply chain between factories, between big companies and the MSMEs in the surrounding areas. Thank you so much.
Oh, the last statement. I haven't rehearsed this. Okay, I only get 20 seconds. So we're going to be rolling out in Jakarta officially next week. Download the app, the application. Just your touch of the face of your phone will provide jobs, will recycle, you can get incentives, you'll help clean up the environment. The list goes on. So download the app, it's free, and we're here to help.
I'm doing it right now.
I'll definitely
downloading it right here. Thank you so much, Hamish, Irma, and Pak Pradana for joining the conversation. Now I'll give the screen back to the MC before we move forward to the next session.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was like, why didn't I know about this? Yeah.
It was a test. The test.
Right now, let's go straight to the last session or the final session of our event today, that we will discuss a policy recommendation. And as usual, I would like to present you a brief profile about our final session of discussion panel speakers. The first speaker is Dharma Joyonegoro, B20 Deputy Chair of Trade and Investment Task Force. And the second is Mrs. Lucia Kusmano, Deputy Head of the SME and Entrepreneurship Division of OECD. And last speakers for this session is Jonathan Devi, as a CEO of Ecosystem Venture Builder. Now, we will directly give this session to the moderator, to Ms. Andita Utami. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu, welcome to the third session of tonight's marathon of just really good stories. In this final session, we are going to focus really on the policy recommendations. So we've heard the good stories, previously 5 different stories, very inspiring. But in this session, we will be hearing from the B20 Deputy Chair of Trade and Investment Task Force, from the Deputy Head of SME and Entrepreneurship of the OECD, and the CEO of Ecosystem in terms of what the G20 leaders can, how the G20 leaders can take this forward in terms of the policies. So we will start with Bapak Dharma, whom I hope already is joining us on the screen.
Coba aku bantu jawabin gitu teks. No.
Halo Bapak, can you?
Greetings, distinguished speakers and all participants of this forum. Good evening. Allow me to first express our appreciation for the Ministry of Cooperatives and SME for the opportunity given to the Trade and Investment Task Force of the B20 Indonesia in addressing this distinguished forum and sharing our views on green economy and sustainable business for SMEs. Ladies and gentlemen, trade and investment have directly and indirectly played a role in pulling hundreds of millions of people out of extreme poverty. Trade and investment have also played a role in boosting green transition through ESG investments and trade in environmental goods and green services. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic certainly has caused global investment to decline, primarily for developing countries. During the pandemic, FDI inflows dipped as much as 40%, with flattening growth forecasted for the ensuing years. Now, we do see that there's a bounce back. However, the fact remains that the recovery is highly unequal. Right? UNCTAD FDI statistics shows that developed economies reach up to 199% growth in 2021, whereas developed countries and least developed countries only grows by 30 and 19% respectively. Furthermore, the recovery of investment flows to SDGs relevant sectors in developing countries remains fragile. The number of SDGs relevant investment projects in developing countries rose only by 11%. That is to say that even though in the past few years, sustainable finance for clean energy transition, impact investment, and decarbonization has been gaining ground, this level of investment is insufficient to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario, primarily for emerging and developing countries to meet its NDC's target. As much as 1.6 to 3.8 trillion would be needed annually for supply-side energy system investments alone. Another $180 billion will be needed annually for adaptation costs. Now, although 60% of the total global climate finance funding goes to non-OECD countries, the investments are not yet flowing to emerging markets at scale. Only about 10% of clean energy investment flow to low-income countries, excluding China. And because the vast majority, is about 74%, come from domestic sources, B20 Indonesia is of the opinion that the international cooperation to increase investment in this area is imperative. Ladies and gentlemen, there are several policy recommendations and policy actions that the B20 Indonesia designed to propose to G20 leaders. These are promoting sustainable finance for clean energy transition, impact investment and decarbonization, supporting transition to climate resilient and responsible supply chains, and promote better financial viability for green business and circular business model, encouraging and supporting increased participation in the voluntary carbon markets, defining and fostering liberalization of trade, environmental goods and green services, and promote regulatory cooperation to accelerate clean energy transition, resource efficiency, and circular economy to support SDGs, facilitating and supporting FDI flows, especially those with circular economic conditions attached to it, and promoting better coordination to establish homogeneous standards where appropriate and mutual recognition for cross-border carbon trade. To facilitate the green economy transition for MSMEs, B20 Indonesia thinks that our G20 leaders should promote green transition and circular economy for MSMEs. How to do this? First, we need to encourage and support commitment from corporations, banks, and capital market players to develop capabilities to support growth of voluntary carbon markets. Now, the biggest problem for developing countries and MSMEs in green transition is lack of funding and investments. And the voluntary carbon market is an excellent alternative source of funding for developing countries and SMEs to finance the green transition. This is a financing opportunity which can be tapped by any companies insofar as their business activities contributes to the reduction of greenhouse gases. Second, promote FDI flows and linkages with local MSMEs, especially with green transition and circular economy conditions attached to it. The transition to green and circular economy, especially in developing countries, requires direct investment. Again, we'll need up to 4.5 trillion in funding, annual investment gap of 2.5 trillion. A global coordinated effort driven by a consistent set of principles is required to address this finance gap. Public sector investment will not be enough, so private sector is required. So in the spirit of just transition, we call on G20 to assist smaller economies in the form of low-interest loan for eligible projects and to provide a green fund or grant for developing economies to incentivize their private sectors to roll out green energy and green industry projects. Third, we need to encourage public-private partnerships for green transition and circular economy. PPPs is a very useful framework under which the public and private sectors can pool and coordinate their financial and technological resources more efficiently. The G20 should encourage MSMEs participation in PPPs as a tool to finance the green transition, while bearing in mind, of course, the potential risks associated with them. And last but not least, strengthen the development of inclusive supply chain ecosystem models. The easiest way for MSMEs to transform the green economy is through the supply chain ecosystem, whereby SMEs are not only demanded but also conditioned and assisted to adhere to green economy models. Government should promote initiatives such as the inclusive closed-loop programs in Indonesia, aiming at providing MSMEs with a support ecosystem covering all aspects of their supply chain, from access to input materials, loans from financial institutions, and insurance, off-take market coordination, and regulatory support. We call on G20 members to promote the development of strong local and international inclusive supply chain ecosystems. These ecosystems should consider all key aspects of MSME developments, such as affordable quality inputs, access to offtakes, access to financing, and capability development towards international standards. Now, as you can see, moving investment in FDI towards green transition and achieving SDGs require concerted efforts, where each one of us should play an active role. Indeed, business cannot do much without the enabling business and investment environment that is formed and shaped by our government and leaders. Nonetheless, business, regardless of size, must also take the initiative and play an active role to move towards sustainability and green economy. Achieving this as intended by the Paris Agreement can only be done through mutual cooperation, or gotong royong, as we say in Indonesia. And G20 Indonesia sincerely hope that we can push forward such cooperation in our presidency more effectively, and I do hope this forum will be one of our platforms to materialize such cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dharma. Thank you for that remarks. I think the final part of that message is what I would like to underline, which is this message of gotong royong, which is consistent with what Irma was saying earlier as well, in terms of how it's really within the DNA of Indonesia to push for kind of a collective approach in solving this problem, and including in terms of pushing for promoting green economy. Now, perhaps we can listen more from Ms. Lucia Kusmano from the OECD. I hope that you're already tuned in. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you so much for joining us. I think what we're curious to learn more about is how previous efforts of the G20 countries, especially in pushing for green economy through MSMEs, have been progressing so far, and what more can and should be done moving forward. So you have 7 minutes to try to answer that big question.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to join you this evening. I was fascinated by the earlier discussion and presentation, because I think that they are very much aligned to the priorities that we have identified. As I know that I have only 7 minutes, I wanted, in fact, if you allow me, to start from the end. What are the key policy priorities that we see need still to be strengthened, reinforced, despite the progress that we have observed in the policies towards assisting, encouraging SMEs towards the green economy? If you can please show the slides, I would start from these final policy priorities messages, and then spend a couple of minutes on each. First of all, improve awareness and knowledge. I think that over the past years, also thanks to the efforts in this regard by the G20, there has been an increased awareness about the role that small businesses play for the transition to sustainable models. And we heard earlier on very interesting experiences in this regard. But we believe that there is still a need to build more awareness among not only small businesses making the business case with small businesses, but also with investors and with policymakers. And I'll tell you more about this with reference to some evidence we have observed when it comes to actual programs, to actual money that is invested for the recovery, so that has been committed over the past years. A second area where we see still there is a room for significant progress is that of strengthening the capabilities of SMEs, and at the same time encourage the development of green markets, with regulatory frameworks, administrative settings that enable small businesses to participate to these green markets, including, of course, public procurement. And strengthening SME capabilities certainly means improving access to strategic resources. It was discussed earlier, the need to increase the financing for SME sustainability, the investment. But I would also highlight what was also mentioned earlier, the need to enable SMEs to access knowledge networks, to access skills, to access data and services that can enable this transition. And finally, as a third big policy message, we need more coherence in policy approaches, taking a whole of government perspective, a cross-cutting approach. So considering fully and thoroughly that policy areas and programs may have synergies, they may reinforce one with the other, but there are also trade-offs that need to be considered. So policy action that can make progress on the one hand, but that may create maybe more obstacle for others. I think that the business and the policy case is very strong. We have heard today also about how awareness about the environmental footprint is established, the fact that also that SMEs and entrepreneurs are essential for eco-innovation and new green markets, where in some countries SMEs account as much as 70 or 90% of clean tech firms. But if we go to the next slide, we can see that SMEs still lag much behind large firms. So whereas there has been some progress, if we look at the type of action that small business take, these still tend to be relatively simple. We see a much larger gap across different geographical areas when it comes to developing sustainable products or services, or taking a more systemic approach to sustainability. And that was the point about raising awareness with policymakers. If we go to the next slide and we look at the numbers, SME targeted support for greening in COVID-19 recovery packages is still relatively low. Of course, small businesses, entrepreneurs, they are expected to benefit from broader measures that improve the overall infrastructure, the business environment. But we know also that small businesses often require targeted support, be accompanied in this transition with some tailored measures. We tracked these type of measures of greening support across more than 90 countries. And what we see is that in recovery packages, the value of the measures that target SMEs is less than 2% of the total. So this raises a question of how real investment can follow and give more substance to the policy discourse. If we go to this next slide, that is more related, as I said earlier, to this raising awareness and the fact that we need also to address data and knowledge gaps. And this is where probably the G20 can play a very important role. We currently lack comparable indicators, more granular data, better evidence on the cost of the transition, on the different needs for different type of entrepreneurs, on the implication of ESG and regulatory approaches for different type of businesses. So we certainly need to improve there. And this is where the OECD has started to work. And the next slide will show you that we are working, in fact, with a pilot dashboard on SME greening indicators that we hope can help better monitor environmental footprint, but also give an instruments for policymakers, the business community, to monitor progress, achievement of the objectives, the ambitious objectives that have been set. And then if we go to the next, I'm conscious of time, so maybe we can go also to the next one, to the next slide. There is this aspect that I mentioned earlier of the access to strategic resources. I mentioned the case of ESG requirements. The SME finance landscape is very likely to change dramatically over the next months, if not the next years. And the next slides is to point out to some areas where we expect that this is going to change. More diverse sectors, diverse financing instruments, but also more reporting requirements that will follow through the supply chain, through the banking system on small businesses. And there is a need as of now, as the rules are defined, to take into consideration how SMEs can respond to this. And to move, I would say, from a logic of exemption, we exempt SMEs because it's more difficult for them, to a logic of enabling. We need SMEs to transform. So we need to think about also regulatory framework that rather than exempting them, help them make the transition. And here I would say that non-financial support becomes absolutely essential. And if we go to the next slide, this is to mention an initiative that the OECD we have taken, and we hope that we can do it also in cooperation with the G20, a platform for discussing on these challenges, in particular for access to finance for sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lucia. Especially thank you for trying to, actually comply with the time limit. That was really comprehensive. I think for a lot of the audience who might not come from policy background, I think that presentation provided the macro view in terms of the three. I like that you started from the beginning, like with all the three top recommendations. We'll talk more about that later. But for now, I will move on to our next and final speaker. You have the hardest job in the world. Yeah. It's already 9 p.m. We will talk about policy. But Jonathan Davey, CEO of Ecosystem Venture Builder, the screen or floor, I guess, is yours.
Yes, thank you, Afu, for the... Sorry. Okay, yeah. Can you go to the next slide now? Yes, so probably as a policy per se, we are not gonna deep dive as deep as what Lucy has said before, but we do want to share the perspective of SMEs as the people who have worked for and by entrepreneurs in the green industry, and working with a lot of different stakeholders within the industry. We believe that there are several things that we can address and also improve so that the whole ecosystems of partnerships and also the green industry can thrive, especially with SMEs and startups as the spearhead. So a little bit about ecosystem. We are actually a venture studio, so we are not accelerator or incubator. We are something in the middle that works together with the founders and help them to go through the journey that usually was referred to as the valley of death, so that they can scale and thrive and maximize the impact of their solutions. If we can just go to the next slide. Since we will be talking about policies, I'm just gonna briefly share with you what are the portfolio that we've been working with and working on, so that you can understand what are the industry types that we are talking about when we talk about our SMEs. So we have 4 portfolios right now, one in waste management sectors, one in energy sectors, one in disaster relief and management, and the other one is deep technology, where we transform waste into microchips. And we have also been conducting several launchpad programs to onboard SMEs and green industries, or as we call it, climate tech startups, to become more scalable and sustainable. So with this experience in mind, and also these challenges that we face on the ground, today we would like to share a little bit more about what we think can help us to build the green industry transitions, especially in SMEs. Next. So basically, we have seen an unprecedented shift in the discussion of climate, where usually in the past we talk, when we talk about climate crisis and emergency, we talk about conservations only, but these days the shift has been transformed into a more sustainable economic development, and also how do we facilitate these needs. And these needs is actually a very lucrative opportunities, where we see in venture financing only with ticket size above $1 million. Last year, it's actually $40 billion has been invested globally, and it has almost outperformed all the investment in the previous decade. So the trend, the mega trend is here, and we believe that it's here to stay. Next. We also see there are a lot of different facets of this mega trend that validates these assumptions, where the advent of new and cheaper technologies, greater consumer demands, policies and regulations are starting to become more supportive, and corporates and investors have started to increase their demand for ESG and sustainability. So the trend have shown not only from the financing perspective, but also the demand perspective that it's really here to stay. However, if we can go to the next slide, we see that there are opportunities that are undercapitalized, at least in Southeast Asian sector, Southeast Asian region. In the climate tech opportunity by annual revenues measured, we have hundreds of billions of potential revenues and impact across different macro verticals. So if we go to the next slide, it begs the questions, what are the challenges or what are the hindrances then? If there are such a big opportunity and the need to act are clear, why is the SMEs and startups have not successfully transitioned? So we see there are two major trends in this. The first one, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yes. The first one, we talk directly to our communities of ecopreneurs. We talk with startups from the green industries, and this is what we found. So aligned with the data from ADB, we see that the feasibility of startups, especially SMEs in the climate tech sectors, is actually very low. It's less than 2% compared to the 14% global trends. And why is this happening? Based on our own mini surveys and also empirical experience on the ground, we see that the three primary challenges is actually assistance on methodology and skill sets. The second is access to risk capital and patient capital with manageable rates and concessionality. And the last one is market barriers and navigating regulations. And all of these usually happen with startups or SMEs with ticket size or valuations below $1 million. So the challenge is not about whether there are enough capital. There are enough capital actually around the globe and also in the region. The challenge is the absorption of those capital cannot happen because the feasibility and the capabilities of the early stages solutions cannot match and cannot be bridged into those absorptions of capital. If you go to the next slides, in addition to the direct interventions to the startup, we also see challenges in several ecosystem, in several facets of the ecosystems where the industry is under-incentivized, scattered, and limited law enforcement. I will not deep dive too much into this, but basically these are some of the empirical experience we find on the ground. And we believe that with the right incentives and also bias not only towards new and shiny solutions, but proven low-risk levers can actually help us to transition. And last and not least is, of course, not only for the creations of the decrees and the policies, but how do we enforce that policies and regulations so that we can level the playing field for all of the players on the ground. Next. So based on those learnings, challenges, and also barriers that we experience on the ground, we agree with some of the recommendations from our partners in the Asian Development Banks, where they have categorized the four major policy recommendations, but we want to add nuance to it. The first one is we should really create more investable climate tech businesses. And what we mean by that is mainstreaming the climate tech methodology, improving the quality of talents, both in entrepreneurs and workers, and also the technical know-how of the ecopreneurs and entrepreneurs so the business can scale. The second one is the availability of more risk capitals for the green industry SMEs. So not only as a growth capital, but also like blended financing that can absorb more concessionality and also can tolerate a longer return rate compared to the market rate is really needed in this space, especially below $1 million US dollars. The third one is on the increasing the clean tech knowledge and reporting. So when we measure and we audit what are the targets of sustainable transition that we do, we can actually think and speak the same languages and move to the same directions. A little bit on this, just a little bit more. Bain actually conducted a report that investors already demand ESG reporting from their portfolio, the LP. But right now, there are no harmonized standards that actually create the system for reporting on that. So it's really hard for us and everyone to create our own perspective on what the impacts will be, and it really gives us scattered approach. My last recommendations will be a stronger and more connected clean tech ecosystem players. So there are two facets in this. First is the support on the ground even before commercializations, because sometimes it started before the commercialization period and it cannot be coming from private sectors only. The second was is the incentivizing collaboration across the pipeline of the ecosystem so that the early stage ecosystem player do have pipeline, do have off-takers in the later stages. My last slide will be the call to actions for, can you go to the next slide, please? Yes. My last slide will be the call to actions to support the clean tech startup from the very early and foundational stage, which is the SME stage, even micro and small stages. Right now, in the climate tech ecosystems or clean tech ecosystems, there are less than 5% of venture builders and also accelerators, incubators working in the space. But I believe that with the right incentives and the right mechanism, we can do the ripple effect and finally create a large-scale and widespread deployment of clean tech solutions that can tap into the market. I think that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, also for trying to meet the time limit. I think I'm very glad to find that there are consistent messages in terms of policy recommendations from Ms. Kusmano and Jonathan in terms of how I think what's been resounding is this issue of capacity and skill sets across the MSMEs, also capital, more risk capital to be made available, but also at the same time the market barriers like that needs to be addressed using including this like whole government approach and also like cross-sectoral lens into the issue. So that's I think very comprehensive, and we hope that that can be a recommendation that will be taken forward to the G20 discussion. We received just I'll just take one question from our online audience, given that we are already past time. But I think like this big question of, in terms of policy, right? You always have this choice of, I guess, command and control regulatory approach of like environmental restrictions, standards, and so on, versus kind of a more market-based economic instruments approach to incentivize actors to change their behaviors or adopt certain ways. I think, and this is like very big picture question, but how do you see, between these two approaches, right? Can, for example, if we just use market-based instruments, would that be sufficient without the regulation, and the other way around? What's the right balance? That's the question. Ms. Kusmano, do you want to start?
Sure. I think it's a very challenging question because the easiest answer would be that we need both. Particularly because for those that are less close to the transition, often it's the regulation that represents the main push. I would think that over time, as also the market demand evolves, the consumer demand evolves, the technologies are more diffused, there can be a greater push also for those that are more lagging behind for moving towards sustainability. So I think that the two will continue to be important, where probably the market changes will provide a further shift. On the regulatory side only, I would like to a bit reiterate what I was mentioning earlier. I think there is a need to consider as of the start how different players can comply with the regulation, and to think small first in this type of regulation, as to avoid that by leaving SMEs out, we really leave them out from a transition that they hardly need.
Thank you. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I actually completely agree with Mrs. Kusmani there. And if I can just add something. So I've seen this concept of massive small, where actually government's role is to provide a level playing field and enabling environment for the technology and innovation and businesses can actually run the courses and take places. And I think that's a very good approach. Also in this case, the only challenges based on what we see on the field, for example, those level playing field right now cannot happen because there are a lot of void in the regulations. For example, in one of our portfolio in the energy sector, there are no ESCO policies that endorse or become the legal umbrella for those business implementation. So it's become very hard. But with the right set of policies and enforcements, I think the market can thrive as long as it's not, we will not ask the government to direct everything, but rather how do government create this enabling environment so that the businesses can thrive. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I'm compelled to ask one follow-up question. How do you bring this developed or like global north versus global south lens into this conversation? Because I mean, I don't know if MSMEs are more an issue, especially in terms of pushing for the green economy. Is it more of an Indonesian and fellow global south countries issues, or yeah, are there any like different ways to look at this? Do you want to start?
Right. I think Ms. Kusmani will be the expert there. But from our understanding right now is that at least in the Indonesian context, it has been and still is the main challenges on how can we make sure that as MSME will not forever be a MSME, or at least that's the dream, right? We want them to scale. We want them to become tomorrow's thought and category leaders in the industry. So as with ecosystem, we have working with a lot of the global north countries actually to see some of their best practices and conduct cooperations activities to make sure that not only the best practice but also resources and access to the international value chain can happen for our portfolio and all the players on the ground. So maybe if Ms. Kusmani would like to add, feel free.
Yeah, no, those are great reflections. Ms. Kusmano, would you like to add?
No, I fully agree. I think that the issues are very similar. Probably the scale of the gaps is different. And the investment gap is clearly more important in the global south. So I think there are clear priorities to ensure that the capitals, the investments for the transition flow as needed also in different directions, including through foreign direct investment that comply with the sustainability objective, as it was also highlighted in the previous discussion. I think that probably where also an important role for the G20 and international fora is concern the international cooperation on regulatory approaches. This is an area where regulation, as I mentioned earlier, will continue to play a very important role. It's an area where discrepancy in coherence represents an additional complexity for any investor and for the businesses. And it's also an area where I think we should avoid that regulation that should enable the green transition are also used for other purposes, like in relation to competition, and trade competition. So I think it's where the G20 should play an extremely important role. Ensure that all players cooperate on the same level playing field when it comes to define a regulatory approach that will drive the change.
Thank you, Ms. Kusmano. I have so many more follow-up questions. As an economist, this space of the policy discussion really is what keeps me awake. I think most people would expect that the last session of like a really 2-hour discussion would be boring, but it's been very insightful. I learned a lot, and if we had more time, there are more questions that I would like to ask. But thank you, Jonathan, for joining the session tonight, and Ms. Lucia Kusmano, thank you for joining us all the way from where you are, and especially thank you all the audience for staying with us throughout the journey. I hope that you, like myself, learned a lot from all the stories from the region, from Indonesia, as well as this particular last part, the policy recommendations that can be taken forward by the G20 leaders. I think the issue of MSMEs in pushing for green economy is absolutely critical. They contribute, the deputy minister earlier already reminded us that they contributed to 60% of Indonesia's economy alone. And again, we heard that in other countries that might also be the case. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of homework, but also there's a lot of energy and initiatives that are already taking place, building momentum, which will hopefully, we can maintain and continue to push forward as we are dealing with the climate crisis. My name is Andita Utami. Thank you so much for joining tonight's session. I hope to see you in the next seminars. Back to the MC.
Give a big applause for all the patient and discussion panel for today's event. Thank you, Ms. Andita Utami. That's today's event, and I would like to thank all the speakers who were present on today, and also the stakeholders who always have been supporting this agenda and may always will be. And also to all the viewers who have watched the Good Day program via Webex and Zoom, and also the YouTube, a bunch of thanks. Hopefully today's event can be useful for all of us and can also create an encouragement and support for all MSMEs, so that they can rise up and move forward and help our economy of our country during this time and for our future. And now, I would leave you with a quote by Stewart Brand, an author and innovative thinker, who once said, "We can see the past but not influence it, but we can influence the future but not see it." Let us all be guided by all the things we have learned and heard throughout the seminar and be able to see and influence our future. I'm Muhammad Zulkaromi, your Master of Ceremony sign out. See you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat datang di era transformasi digital koperasi dan UMKM. Ini adalah era ketika cerita tentang koperasi dan UMKM bukan lagi soal mengharap uluran tangan, namun lebih tentang ia menjadi harapan di masa yang penuh tantangan. Sedari dulu, sedikit ia menyadari bahwa mereka yang dianggap pelaku ekonomi pinggiran, mereka yang menggerakkan koperasi dan UMKM, sejatinya merupakan pilar utama ekonomi bangsa ini. Lihat saja, mereka adalah mayoritas pelaku ekonomi tanah air dengan lebih dari 61% kontribusinya terhadap PDB negeri ini. Tangan-tangan dan langkah mereka kini menjadi harapan kebangkitan, meskipun 3 tantangan disrupsi menghadang seketika. Pandemi yang telah mengubah cara hidup, struktur demografi yang beralih, hingga gelombang perubahan teknologi digital era kedua yang kecepatannya tak terbayangkan sebelumnya. Maka, inilah era ketika transformasi digital bagi koperasi dan UMKM menjadi keniscayaan. Yakinkan bahwa mereka para pejuang ekonomi rakyat tidak sendiri, sebab pemerintah mendorong jutaan UMKM onboarding ke platform digital. Sementara, koperasi modern berbasis digital terus ditumbuhkan, kembangkan. Orkestra telah dimainkan dengan harmonis sebagaimana Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM mengupayakan penerapan proses bisnis dari hulu ke hilir atau end-to-end digital transformation. Dengan semangat sinergi dan kolaborasi seluruh stakeholder, marilah kita sambut kebangkitan koperasi dan UMKM dalam menciptakan new economic value menuju Indonesia maju, mandiri, dan berdaulat. Ini era kita, ini era koperasi dan UMKM. Berubah digital.
Kesetaraan gender masih menjadi isu global yang bergulir di tengah masyarakat. berbagai gerakan dalam memperjuangkan kesetaraan gender juga terus berkembang seiring dengan kemajuan zaman. Namun sayangnya, perempuan masih belum cukup terwakilkan dalam skala ekonomi global dengan berbagai bentuk diskriminasi yang dihadapi. Mulai dari peluang yang tidak memenuhi syarat, kurangnya akses keuangan, hingga bias gender, menjadi sekian dari bentuk diskriminasi yang sering dihadapi oleh perempuan, baik di Indonesia maupun dunia. Indonesia memiliki lebih dari 64 juta UMKM yang berkontribusi terhadap 60% PDB nasional, dengan 64% diantaranya adalah perempuan. Oleh karena itu, peningkatan peran perempuan pada UMKM juga perlu didorong dalam arus utama kebijakan, di mana perempuan tidak hanya ditempatkan sebagai pemain sekunder, tetapi menjadi pemain inti dalam keberlangsungan UMKM. Dalam kurun waktu 20 tahun terakhir, terdapat peningkatan terhadap jumlah usaha yang dipimpin oleh perempuan sebesar 114%, dengan fakta 62% pengusaha perempuan berusia antara 40 hingga 59 tahun. Data dari Kementerian Keuangan juga menyebutkan bahwa indeks inklusi keuangan perempuan di Indonesia mencapai 75,15%. Hal tersebut menjadi acuan bagi pemerintah dalam mendorong peningkatan inklusi keuangan perempuan demi terciptanya kesempatan yang sama bagi perempuan di bidang keuangan. Memperhatikan cross-cutting isu perempuan, Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM berkolaborasi dengan engagement group W20 dan B20 yang menjadi upaya agar lebih banyak perempuan memimpin, berpartisipasi, serta memiliki akses pada peluang bisnis dan ekonomi dengan mendukung UMKM yang dimiliki dan dikelola oleh perempuan. Melalui berbagai inisiatif, dukungan, dan gerakan yang terus berjalan, Empowering Women Entrepreneurs Through Inclusive Business menjadi sebuah monumen kolaborasi antara Kementerian Koperasi dan UKM dengan Kementerian Pemberdayaan Perempuan dan Perlindungan Anak, W20, B20, Apindo, serta beberapa stakeholder lainnya untuk mewujudkan pemberdayaan wirausaha perempuan dalam mencapai tujuan Recover with Small and Medium Enterprises.
Pusat Layanan Usaha Terpadu atau PLUT KUMKM merupakan unit teknis yang memberikan layanan pendampingan usaha yang inklusif kepada koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha secara komprehensif dan terpadu. Dengan terbitnya Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 7 Tahun 2021 menunjukkan keberpihakan pemerintah terhadap koperasi, usaha mikro kecil, dan wirausaha serta memperkuat peran PLUT KUMKM melalui pendataan UMKM, perizinan produk dan usaha, kemitraan, dan inkubasi melalui lembaga inkubator. PLUT KUMKM telah tersebar di 74 provinsi, kabupaten, dan kota. Melalui redesign program PLUT, diyakini akan menjadi akselerator pengembangan layanan PLUT menjadi rumah UMKM. New PLUT akan menjadi fondasi dalam membentuk ekosistem wirausaha muda, produktif, inovatif, dan berkelanjutan. Melalui program pusat konsultasi dan pendampingan, pusat pengembangan produk unggulan daerah, factory sharing, marketplace, public space, kompetisi PLUT, pendaftaran usaha dan perizinan UMKM dengan layanan yang diberikan yaitu coworking space, konsultasi bisnis dan pendampingan, promosi dan pemasaran, pelatihan teknis dan manajerial, inkubasi bisnis, perizinan dan sertifikasi usaha, seleksi atau kurasi, dan perluasan kemitraan. New Food, Rumah UMKM, dan Center of Excellence.
UMKM adalah kita. Dahulu orang bijak senantiasa yakin bahwa masa depan adalah milik mereka yang menyiapkan hari ini. Sampai saatnya semua yakin ketika hanya merekalah yang bekerja keras mampu membuktikan diri menjadi insan-insan yang tidak berada dalam kerugian. Saudaraku, begitulah hakikatnya perjuangan. Percayalah, proses sungguh tidak akan mengkhianati hasil. Jika engkau tidak yakin, sejenak tengoklah para pengusaha mikro dan kecil UMKM yang meniagakan hidupnya dengan semangat tinggi. Mereka adalah jiwa-jiwa yang meyakini bahwa bangsa kita bukanlah bangsa yang pemalas. Berabad lamanya kita menggantungkan diri pada mereka yang terus bergerak, bekerja, memutar roda perekonomian dengan tangan-tangan kecilnya, menjadi tulang punggung yang menumpu faktor pembagi dalam demografi. Akuilah, UMKM adalah nafas bangsa ini. Ada satu masa, bukan sekali dua kali, ketika industri ambruk, pabrik-pabrik menutup operasi, kantor-kantor mengurangi jumlah pegawai, hingga koridor gedung-gedung besar menjadi demikian sepi. Kemana larinya mereka yang tereliminasi jika UMKM tidak menyambut dan memeluk mereka tetap dengan asa yang menghubung tinggi? Pun saat pandemi yang memporak-porandakan kehidupan, jangan mudah lupa bahwa UMKM-lah yang menjadi penyelamat bangsa ini. Meski nafasnya juga tersendat, terhantam badai pandemi yang dahsyat, namun para pejuang ini tetap gagah berani, tegak berdiri. Indonesia sepertinya inilah saatnya untuk berpihak pada pilar-pilar kecil yang nyatanya adalah fondasi perekonomian bangsa ini. Saatnya memperpanjang nafas mereka dan memulihkan sakit akibat pandemi karena mereka jualah bagian dari pemulihan ekonomi. Memulihkan UMKM adalah memulihkan bangsa. Mereka berhak akan BPUM, subsidi kur, hingga transformasi digital agar semangat tetap laju. Banggakan mereka dengan menjadikannya sebagai bagian dari kebanggaan kita. Banggalah akan karya mereka, sebab UMKM adalah kita.